Good evening, everybody. Welcome to our Roseville Joint Union High School District Board meeting for March 9th. We're going to start off with the Pledge of Allegiance, so everyone would rise and join me. Thank you. So prior to open session, the board met in closed session. There is no reportable action in closed session. Now for our meeting protocol, thank you all for being here. We encourage everyone to come join us at these meetings and share their comments with us. You have a couple of different opportunities to share your comments. If you have the opportunity to fill out one of these forms, we'd love that. You don't have to, but it makes it easier for us to manage the difficulty if you can do that. If you're here to speak on an agenda item, your name will be called during that agenda item. If you are here to speak on an item not on the agenda, then you can do so during the public comment time. And that public comment time has to be something that is subject to the jurisdiction of our board. As a board, we don't condone the use of profanity, vulgar language, gestures, or any other inappropriate behavior, including personal attacks, threats, directed towards any meeting participant, or district statute. Please do that. We want to hear you. We want you all to be here and have an opportunity to share your thoughts with us. Do it in a civil manner. We're now going to get into our agenda. Our first item on the agenda is our board report. Start off with that. First, I know there's some confusion on what we may or may not be doing at today's meeting. I know I got a bunch of emails from people related to this item that's on the agenda for the Western Classroom District, either tonight or tomorrow. So, just so you know, that's not our item. Dealing with that. It's been a really busy month since we've been here. Some of you may notice we have a new agenda order. We've done that to make our meetings go a little bit better and allow us to focus on what we do. One of the items we want to pay attention to is the very bottom of the agenda. It's the Horizon report. This is now your way as members of the public to see what we're going to be doing in future meetings. This will be a combination of items that are regularly scheduled on the agenda that we more coming up, as well as bigger issues that are planned in advance with our budget. We're just going to make it a practice of always having this on our agenda, remain informed as to what we're doing. You may have noticed we revised our meeting protocols a little bit, but I just read off. Very happy that we have about their children's education or share their opinion. Remember, there's plenty of room to share your opinion, disagree, or agree without being disagreeable. Work with us on that. Personally, since we've been here a month ago, I've had the opportunity to visit all of our school places, except for the Creek, which I accomplished tomorrow. I had the opportunity to meet with a lot of teachers who are very supportive. You know, there's a number of issues that are parents. We have a lot of work to do. But I can tell you in my discussions I've had with all of our sites, clearly have great experience, especially those clusters. Great. One of the highlights to me has been meeting with our school government classes. Clearly, you get to see a few of them here. Selena and Autumn. Selena goes to Antelope. Autumn goes to have them here to share in our decision making, share some things that are happening in their schools, and their all this stuff that I tell you when I go talk to them. to have an opportunity to update your course. I met and talked to all of our principals to understand the challenges we have in the course. It's clear, we know we got a lot of support, but do it together. Results. You know, we're going to be talking about curriculum today. You also may know we're talking about library materials, equity policy, all the different entire district. We're going to have this process where we engage in these issues, solve, and have strong policies going forward, that the community can be comfortable. We are running our school in the best manner. Quite frankly, our principals, our administrators, our teachers get back to the work of our students. One of the things I noticed going to all of our campuses is the need to address the balance versus population that are different schools. It's really important. We talked about that before. I'll let you know that we'll be taking on some great opportunities for us. I think the other thing that's become very clear to me is we have to keep our eye on the structure of our school sites. You're all here to see our newest gem in the district, but we have a lot of other properties. We have a lot of we have to make sure that we are addressing our structure. We have some short campuses. I personally enjoy meeting with the teachers, the principals, about the site-based budgets. We're going to have time to look at the budget every year, but we very rarely get a chance to how the school is spending the money. It's very illuminating and gratifying to see how well those schools are built. I do want to put a picture up here. One of our board members, I have a small picture, but on the bottom there you can see George. George is one of our student board members. George and his teammates at Oakmont High School went to the national competition. Two of our teams took second place nationally from Oakmont, so that's a big deal. No, it's a bigger deal. In fact, George is there. That's my daughter holding up there. So we're very proud of Oakmont and stuff. So I think I've talked way too much. I just want to kind of tune in some of the things that we've been doing, thinking about. I get to hear from my colleagues, starting with. Oh, yeah, no. No, go ahead.
Thanks for coming and being part of our students' education. We appreciate when community members come and share their opinions. We love hearing from you all. I will be out at Granite Bay High School tomorrow doing site visits in regards to that. That's what we're looking at tomorrow. After that, and then I forgot to mention a couple of the teachers in the adult transition program and physical fitness workout Wednesdays with some programs with our adult transition students, and we'll see them featured in the City of Roseville Parks and Rec magazine that'll be coming out next week. So that's been kind of fun and special working with students and with teachers. And we had a lot of fun with that out at the fitness board by Oakmont High School and my community. So just looking forward to getting through this exciting meeting tonight. Thursday night. Thank you.
Move on to Marlo.
I appreciate all of you caring about our students. Since our meeting, I have continued to go out to the different sites and have kind of a open forum, talk to teachers, come share what they want to say. And I was out at Antelope High School last, and I will continue to make my way around the district, hopefully finishing off after spring break. So I'll continue to work with RSDA
everyone, thank you for coming out on this rainy night to make your voice heard. We really appreciate it. I attended a parent forum at Antelope High School, and we had a meaningful conversation about how to spotlight students' academic performance. And that also included spotlighting students who test out of the English Learner Program, which is not something that's done specifically for them now. So that's really exciting. And Dr. Moore and I toured Roseville High School, learned about the school's rich history, and toured some classrooms, including a culinary classroom that was actually in the middle of a cooking lab. So that was really exciting.
Thank you very much. We're now going to hear from our two wonderful student board members.
Can I do that? Oh, I think it's on. Oh, okay. I just wasn't close enough to it. But just to give a little update to what it's been like at our school since the last time I had a meeting. We hosted our blood drive, which was really successful, and all slots for blood donations were filled. This was really great for our recent blood shortage, and I would always encourage anybody here that can donate to donate, because there's a lot of people in need for that. Switching gears a little bit to sports, our winter sports have concluded, and we're just working on transitioning to our spring sports and working to support those. Currently, our upcoming school leaders are undergoing an election to determine the next year's cabinet position, so that's exciting. It's wrapping up this year. And as of right now, we're planning a spring carnival for our students and community that will focus on drawing in young students to Roseville in an additional attempt to aid the declining population issue that we've been having. Along with this, half of those proceeds will go back to the participants of the festival, and half will be donated back to homeless shelters, focusing on getting food to people who are in need. And we would love if any of you guys could attend it. And speaking of, thank you to Mr. Kotze for visiting our campus. It was really nice to have you there. And that's all from me. Thank you.
Alright, mine's going to be a little shorter, but yesterday was International Women's Day, so Antelope High School celebrated that by wearing blue, and we had a good population of our students wearing blue, and Feminism Club ran a fundraiser during lunch, and they made a lot of money where they could support back to their club. We also had a blood drive where all our spots were filled, and it was great to see all the students volunteer for that, and all the students donate blood. We also had the NHS talent show, which was a big success. We had it in our Performing Arts Theater, and we brought in a couple $100 for a children's hospital nearby. And we are also preparing for Power Puff season. So we have our Spirit Week coming up at the end of the month, and I'm excited for the seniors to win Power Puff. And lastly, I've been helping promote Antelope High School to be one out of 100 schools that are going to be offering AP African American Studies next year, and I'm so excited to hear about that. Thank you.
Wonderful, thank you. Our next item on the agenda is 4.3, which is superintendent and or cabinet reports and communications.
All right, so there's no communications that have been received, and I just wanted to touch on two topics. One, although she's not here tonight, Trustee Julie Hirota was recognized last night by the Sacramento Business Journal as one of Sacramento's most admired CEOs. So congratulations to Trustee Hirota on that recognition. And then back on February 17th, since we haven't been together for a while, we had another day of unified sports where all of our students from student activities and athletes and our special needs students get together, and it was a kickball tournament out in the football stadium here with hundreds of kids from all of our district get together, and it's just a great time. It's a blast. I just want to commend Craig Garabedian, our Executive Director of Special Education, and all the staff in his department that make that happen. It is truly a wonderful event. Just smiles and a great day with all of our students. So,
Other cabinet members? People?
High School Student LCAP Forum. And Executive Director Judy Fisher has been hosting that at every school where we gather students from a variety of groups to help us understand the survey data that we received from all of the community, but just to see what the priorities are at our schools
we'll be bringing that back to the board in a future meeting. But it's great to hear from our students, and they are very wise.
Move on to our next item, which is committee reports. I know the whole committee does not have any reports. There are a few reports from the committee. Okay. So now we're going to get into what, for many of you, is probably the main event. Public comment. Remember, we have a lot of people that we want to get through. We're going to have 90 seconds per person because of the number of people we have when you speak. I'm going to ask you, although you may want to clap or boo at certain times, please don't. That just expands the amount of time. So no cheers, no jeers. Let's listen respectfully to everybody. So that we can hear from everybody, because we do value your input and want to make sure we hear from you. So, on our public comment, I've got a lot. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to call off 3 names at a time. One will be the person to speak. The next 2 will be the people on deck, so if you can make your way up so we can minimize the transition time. Let's drop this person. So, first person is going to be Catherine Boulos, followed by Jason Wedge, followed by Donna Beng. Make your way up to the podium here. Assume you're Catherine, right? All right. 90 seconds. The clock is going to be over here at some point. Pull it up. I'm working on it. We haven't started your time yet. Right now.
That better? There we go.
Okay.
All right.
Go ahead.
Okay. I would say good evening, board members. My name is Catherine Lewis, and I do not have a student in the school district. However, I do live in Antelope near Antelope High School, and I am a public school teacher myself. I came here tonight to thank you for having sanity, for seeing that having specific events put forth by our children and not always in their best interest, whether they think so. So I appreciate the sanity that you afforded our community at this time. And I would like to suggest, you've mentioned library materials as being an item that you are addressing in this meeting or upcoming meeting. Please have someone review those materials. I understand the need for inclusivity. I understand the need for representation. As I said, I am a public school teacher. However, some of the materials I have seen, I have perused, are not appropriate for children. They are no more appropriate for children than a Playboy or a Penthouse magazine. And I'm fairly certain you don't want those in your libraries. So the language that is used in the books and the subject matter of the books is not something I believe should be in any school library for children, students, regardless of age. If they're under 18, we need to make decisions. So I hope that someone will actually read the material in its entirety, not just look at the label or the LGBT or black or skin or whatever it is that the publisher puts on it. Actually read it before you decide that it belongs in your schools. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Jason Wedge. Remember, the less cheers we have, the quicker we get through this. Jason Wedge, Donna Bengal, and then Angie Nakao. Jason?
Good evening, President Constant and Board of Trustees. Jason Wedge. I am the current Vice President of the Auburn Union School District Trustee, and I am here just to thank you for the recent actions that this school district took with regards to protecting our children. I believe as a school board trustee, our first and number one priority is to protect our children. And you guys have shown that with your recent action of shutting down this this festival, we'll call it, recently. So I thank you for that, and I'm anticipating that other school districts will follow suit with that. And I want to leave with a question. And the question is, you don't have to answer to me, I understand the rules. The question is, who has authority of what is right and what is wrong with our children? Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker will be Donna Bangle, followed by Angie Nakao, followed by Melissa McDonald.
Hello, board members. Thank you for hearing me tonight. First of all, I'd like to say to Pete Constant that I'm embarrassed for Roseville board to have to ask public comment to not contain profanity, etc. That's embarrassing. Not that you did it, but that you had to do it. My concern tonight is for the students of the LGBT plus community in Roseville High School District. I am concerned about the message the cancellation of the annual fundraiser for the balloons will cause these students. From your board docs, I'd like to read: the Roseville Joint Union High School District prohibits discrimination, intimidation, harassment, including sexual harassment, or bullying based on a person's actual or perceived ancestry, color, disability, gender, gender identity, gender expression, immigration status, national race or ethnicity, religion, sex, sexual orientation, or association with a person or group with one or more of these actual or perceived characteristics. In canceling the fundraiser that was going to be happening at the Roseville High School Theater, I read that you guys were trying to keep the students safe, but I've seen students talking from that group that has said that they feel disenfranchised and they are hurt at having this thing canceled for them, and I'm afraid of the message it's going to send. I'd also like to say that the young lady here, the student board, that said she was looking forward to the African American.
Your time is up.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sorry about that.
Our next speaker is Angie Nakao, followed by Melissa McDonald, followed by Tamara Mahmood.
Hi, I'm a mom of 2 students, and I'd like to thank you for what you did with denying the permit for the Landing Spots fundraiser. I think it's really great to focus on academics, and we can keep our schools academic, and I really believe that we can have an environment that is non-offensive to all people, where everybody on any side feels comfortable, because we're not getting into issues that maybe go against people's beliefs or that dabble into social issues and politics. So we just focus on the academics. We can all feel comfortable and safe and happy in our schools. Thank you.
Our next speaker will be Melissa McDonald, followed by Tamara Mahmood, followed by last name is probably Buslani. Does that make sense? I couldn't read your writing, but you're third on deck.
Good.
Melissa, go ahead.
Okay. Good evening, everybody. I just have to say, it's still weird for me to come to these meetings. I get this PTSD, and then I realize, well, I'm not up there anymore. So, retired trustee, glad to be. Thank you guys for having this forum. It's really important, and I am glad that everyone's here, even if I don't agree with everyone. I think this is part of the democracy to do this. I'm speaking right now for 2 points that aren't on the agenda. I know, and I thank you, Pete, that libraries are coming. I know they're not agendaized tonight, so there's no Brown Act violation that can't happen tonight, but I look forward to it happening. I'm upset that our librarians have not been able to purchase books since October. That concerns me. They have a budget of, I understand, $35,000 that's not being utilized, and our students are not being able to get books, and that's troubling. I'm sad that it's Women's History Month that we don't have any book displays in our libraries. I'm sure all of you have read the CDC report that has come out that our teen girls in particular are in crisis. There are unprecedented rates of mental health issues, and having positive book displays about strong women and resilience are really important. And with my remaining 20 seconds, I would just like to say that I am very, very, very concerned about our queer community of students. You guys serve all students. All of us care about kids. I think everyone here does. Every kid deserves to be safe and loved and respected in our district. Thank you.
Tamara, followed by somebody who tells me her name, followed by David Hobson or David H.O.S. something. All right, you're next after that, all right? Sorry, guys, I have a hard time deciphering reading. Go ahead, Tamara.
Good evening. To echo
all students. We should give them visibility. That's been shown time and again to improve students' well-being, and we do have a well-being mental health crisis for kids, so that should be at the forefront. And all students means those are our Black students, those are our students from Latin American descendants, those are our LGBTQIA students, those are our female students. They all deserve to be seen, they all deserve to be celebrated, and I really urge the board to continue to put that in the forefront.
Thank you. After you, give me your name first. After you, David, and then Cynthia Davis. I think I've had problems with your name before. I apologize. It's my old eyes, not your age.
And honestly, coming up here never gets easy. So,
Okay, we don't fight. Start your time over.
And so, okay. First of all, I want to say thank you for taking the policy and not allowing any inappropriate performance to be placed in our program. Because as a parent and a taxpayer, I appreciate the safeguarding of our students, but performance where people are dancing for tips should be allowed, no matter the cause or excuse. Thunder down under is unacceptable, and Mr. Chum is unacceptable. This has nothing to do with race, religion, gender identity, or anything else. This is an education place. So let's go back to academics, and we already said that. I need to be honest, I'm so tired of this disgusting agenda. It's ridiculous. We go from explicit crude curriculum and books to potentially hosting a drag show or a festival. What is the purpose? What is the reason behind this? Every person in this room should be concerned and questioning what is going on here. And if you're not, you might be part of the problem. Mental health for kids is declining. Maybe this is the cause, right? A lot of pressure. Did you grow up? Anybody grow up with this in their school? I didn't. I have 2 older kids that went through the system. None of this was allowed, ever. So please, stop pushing pornography. Stop trying to make it cool, because guess what? It's not. So, board, I'm asking you to please hold strong with this. And if you guys want to do this, read it on your own time, at the school hours. And CRT policy.WUSD. You guys, let's do it.
Thank you. Right. So we have David, followed by Cynthia Davis, followed by Devin Burke, who so far has had the neatest.
As a Roseville parent and citizen, I strongly oppose any activities in curriculum featuring explicit sexual content to ever be promoted to underage students. Sexual education of children is first a responsibility and a right of parents of those children. No school staff, administrators should assume authority to teach sexual education to underage students without the explicit permission and authorization of their parents. Explaining and teaching our children about sexuality, what it is and what it does, is probably the most challenging subject every parent has to address with their children. It is personal and complex, and emotional and physical and spiritual and relational all at the same time. And it is one of the fundamental aspects of human life and activity. To understand it requires head and heart and compassion and truthfulness. Every caring parent knows this and strives to address this subject with their children with maturity, empathy, and clarity. So we must try together to get a better understanding of the sexual deceit and distortion which has overtaken our culture. We and our kids are all in this together. In closing, I wanted to share an extremely insightful analogy, which you'll have to wait for the next time that I'm up here. Thank you.
Right. We have Cynthia next, followed by Devin, followed by Lori Nellie.
Good evening. I'm a retired middle school science teacher in the Roseville City School District. I'm extremely disappointed and disturbed that the Roseville High School District rescinded the contract with the Landing Club and its drag show fundraiser. A fundraiser needed to fund a safe summer camp for Placer County LGBTQ+ teens. It appears that a vocal minority has influenced the district. They claim that drag shows sexualize and do not indoctrinate children.
This seems ludicrous to me. How many males in this room dressed up in drag for Halloween as children and teens? I'm positive not one of you was indoctrinated or sexualized by that experience. Throughout human history, men have dressed as women in plays, men have worn makeup, wigs, and tights, even our founding fathers, and religious leaders have worn ornate gowns, hats, and jewelry. I'm guessing none of them felt indoctrinated or sexualized. Today, event spaces like the Roseville High School Theater are rented for child beauty pageants where little girls are dressed in provocative clothing and hairstyles and wear more makeup than most grown women wear. Today, girls in school dance shows wear provocative clothing and dance in sexualized ways. Today, high school and college cheerleaders, gymnasts, volleyball players, and swimmers wear uniforms, leotards, shorts, and bathing suits that leave very little to the imagination. Why are these students allowed to participate in their chosen activities, but not LGBTQ+ students? Why are their events not canceled with the claim that they are too sexual and indoctrinating? Please do not allow a small group of parents and even people from outside the district to make decisions. If you just please let them do the show and we can
Guys, we're doing so good with not slowing things down. Devin, then Lori, and then Nick Bennett, our best hand printer. You're up.
Hello, my name is Devin, and I'm a parent of a graduate from this district and a 6th grader whom I pulled out of public school 2 years ago. I would like to take this opportunity to voice my support, praise, and thanks to the RJUHSD School Board for protecting the community and our kids, and in doing the job you were elected to do in regards to canceling the permit for a certain show that was scheduled to take place on Roseville High School grounds, but the work does not end here. So I would like to remind you all to continue to do the jobs for which you were elected by ensuring all events moving forward held on school campuses are appropriate and do not solicit or exploit minors. I also implore you to do a thorough review of all curriculum and to ensure teaching materials have clear guidelines about what is or is not appropriate curriculum. Books like The Bluest Eye, The Perks of Being a Wallflower, Flamer, and Kindred, which contain explicit violence like rape, suicide, molestation, drug use, and incest, have no place in school curricula or library. This may be a preferred lifestyle for some, but it should never, under any circumstance, be taught as a subject in school. This sexual perversiveness has nothing to offer, nor does it improve our children's education or the maturing of their minds. As a parent and a tax-paying citizen in this community, I demand transparency and a role in the curriculum process. Despite what some have said about teachers being the experts, and there are some really great teachers in this district, the experts are actually us, the parents, and no one loves, nurtures, teaches, or wants what is best for our kids more than we do. Thank you.
Thank you. Hey guys, I'm going to ask you to stop the applause and the cheers and all that because we really need to get through this. Lori, followed by Nick, followed by Shannon Catanella. You're up.
Thank you to the board for canceling the adult drag show at Roseville High School. School is not the place to attend such an activity. School is about learning math, English, how to work as a team, how to be college ready. Please continue to take out the sexualized agenda and keep it academic.
If you continue to speak out, you'll be asked to leave. Okay.
That's right. Okay. Thank you. I'm done.
All right. So if there's a problem, just notify a staff member versus shouting out, please. Nick, followed by Shannon, followed by Mark Wright. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you. I just wish to voice my disappointment in the canceling of the landing spot event. You used regulation 1330 to do so. It's a broadly worded regulation that allows religious services, a broad range of activities, even events that serve alcohol, and yet somehow this event did not meet those standards. I'd ask you to review your own policies for 410 and 415, which requires you to support diversity and prevent discrimination. I urge you to revise your own regulations to allow these events because the students who wanted to participate in this event were doing nothing wrong, and I I highly doubt that this board and district had any evidence that they were going to do anything wrong or inappropriate. Thank you.
Right, we have Shannon, followed by Mark Wright, followed by Christy Ward.
Hi, good evening. I have a child in the district and I concur. Explicitly sexual events should not be held on campus during or after school. However, I've asked the landing spot about this event and it is not sexual. Many in this room have loved ones in the LGBTQ community. That sister, that brother, that auntie, that friend. They were a teenager once, a teenager in school. LGBTQ adults were LGBTQ teens and they need support then and now. Speaking of support, California Ed Code Law 201 says, there is an urgent need to teach and inform pupils in the public schools about their rights as guaranteed by the federal and state constitutions in order to increase pupils' awareness and understanding of their rights and the rights of others, with the intention of promoting tolerance and sensitivity and protecting the society and responding to potential harassment and hate violence. Federally speaking, we may not impede freedom of speech, freedom of press, or the right of people to peaceably assemble. I worry that the lawsuits may come. It's appalling that a board would use their platform to share misinformation. To believe that a drag show is a strip show is inherently wrong. It is recklessly, willfully ignorant. As a drag show does not mean stripping, this was an opportunity for the district to live up to law and communication. In lieu of the event, what is the district planning to do to support their LGBTQIA students? Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Mark Wright, followed by Christy Ward, followed by Jeff Hornet. Mark?
Thank you. Thank you for letting me speak to you. Thank you, board. I come here to say thank you for sticking up for our community standards. We elected you for this purpose. We want our schools to be academics. We would get away from all these problems if we would stick to reading, writing, and arithmetic. This is what we need to succeed in school and in the world. When we go to other countries, we're so low on the standards. When we have when I was younger, we had some kids come from Russia for high school exchange. They sat in school because they already knew everything that we were teaching in our schools. And so we need to help get our schools to be academically better and get away from these social issues and actually work on making our kids so they can do reading, writing, arithmetic, and be programmers and be the next engineers of this world. This social stuff is not helping them, and it won't help them in the long run to be better students, be better in the world and actually making money and making America better. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Christy Ward, then Jeff, and then Mike Murray.
Hello. I just think that dressing up as of opposite sex is one thing, but exotic dancers out there, you don't know what's going to happen, and you're telling your students to bring dollar bills for tips. I don't think that's okay. So I just think schools need to be academic, and they can encourage everyone to be who they are, and that's fine. But thank you for not having this at the school, and also the landing spot could have decided to have it somewhere else. Thank you.
Thank you. We have Jeff, followed by Mike, followed by Kimberly Crabtree. Jeff?
Thanks for your time this evening. At the last board meeting, several parents expressed their disappointment in the board for the lack of support for the teachers when some parents accused them of, quote, grooming, unquote, their children. It's absolutely pathetic that this board still has not offered a statement regarding this topic. I guess silence here is a bold statement in and of itself. I learned that the district recently revoked the permit for a family-friendly fundraiser at a district facility for a non-district event supporting an LGBTQ support group. It's quite concerning in the shadow of discussing the book banning efforts. These efforts are laced with hate, racism, and homophobia. What's next here? Take a quick look at history. We're going down a very dangerous path. A path of separation and abomination. A path reminiscent of Hitler, who did more than enough to decimate millions, including my family. I sincerely hope that this is not the legacy that the board leaves behind. Thank you.
Sorry for the interruption there. I'm gonna ask again, please do not interrupt the speakers, because I hate to have to ask people to leave this meeting. But we have to allow people on all sides of this issue to speak. It's not that hard to sit and listen. So I'm gonna ask you that, and I really don't want to have to ask anyone to leave. But if you start making comments or jeering when someone's speaking, then I will ask you to leave. It's gonna be Mike, followed by Kimberly, followed by Reverend Alex De Silva Soto? Mike.
Thank you. I'm Mike Murray. Thank you for letting me speak tonight. I'd like to thank this board for their prompt action recently. When this community elected you, it was in part to protect our community values. Children dancing for cash tips is not appropriate, especially in this community. There's a reason you're regarded as leaders in this state. This goes for both the elected school board members and your wonderful staff. Thank you for protecting our community values, protecting our children, including parents in decision making, and expanding transparency. Your efforts deserve recognition. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we're going to have Kimberly, then Reverend Alex De Silva Soto, and then Cassie Lynn after that. So, Kimberly?
Maidu Community Center, Roseville Theater Arts Academy, at the grounds, or their own facility, are examples of places that the Loomis Church could have used to host their drag show. It's shameful that they deceived you and lied on their rental application to have it at RHS, although it's not surprising that such a group would represent themselves as something they aren't to get what they want. Soliciting to exploit children for dancing for tips is appalling. And I wanted to publicly say thank you to those that stepped in to stop and rescind the agreement. Unfortunately, it will not be the last time, so I ask that if you aren't already, to thoroughly review and make certain that use agreements for events associated with our schools are always in congruence with the RJU mission and vision. Also, I was at SILT on Monday and want to report an observation I made. Every single educator that presented referred to RJU students as kids. Not young adults, not mature adults, kids. Kids are children if you look it up on the internet. You are taking responsibility in what you expose them to when they're at school. So please take that to heart. Thank you.
Thank you. We have Reverend Alex, then Cassie Lynn, and then Natasha Moldovani. Reverend.
Good evening, I'm Reverend Alex De Silva Soto, and you got it right at least once. I serve with the faithful people of Sierra Foothills Unitarian Universalist Church in Auburn, but we have families and young people all over the county, and many of our students are under your leadership, studying in our schools. I join in the celebration of this impressive showing of the community. And with that said, my church and I are extremely worried that religious fanaticism and neo-fascism seem to be making their way in our county by eroding the democratic and pluralistic fabric of our communities. Just a few days ago, your board was pressured and threatened to revoke the permit for a family-friendly drag show fundraiser. As you are aware, and those who understand anything about drag shows will know, this fundraiser was meant to fund the summer camp providing safe space for LGBTQIA students. Many of these students are terrorized on a daily basis simply because they are truthful and honest about who they are. Many of these students were looking forward to a refuge, respite this summer. And by the grace of God and our community support, we will make sure that they will have a summer break from institutionalized transphobia, homophobia, and other forms of discrimination. Thank you.
We have Kathy, followed by Natasha, followed by Paul Everts. Kathy.
Hi, my name is Cassie Lynn, and I am a parent in Roseville. I was very upset to hear this board revoke the landing spots permit to have the youth drag show at Roseville High. Drag does not sexualize minors, nor is it harmful to them. To compare it to burlesque or Magic Mike shows a misunderstanding of what drag is. The youth drag show did not violate any laws or district policies. There is nothing illegal or immoral about dressing in a gender non-conforming way. The youth drag show was a fundraiser for teens to attend a summer camp, and it is not against district policies or fundraisers, which includes receiving cash donations, to be held on school property. LGBTQ plus kids are more than 4 times as likely as their peers to die by suicide, and all it takes is one adult in their life telling them they are loved and worthy to reduce that chance. The landing spot provides that to queer kids and is one of the few safe spaces for them. Schools should also be a safe space for all students, regardless of sexual orientation or gender identity, and when the youth drag show was canceled, our district became less safe for LGBTQ plus students. District policy prohibits discriminating against anyone based on sex, sexual orientation, gender, gender identity, and gender expression. I urge the board to amend district policy to specifically allow school property to be used for LGBTQ plus events, including youth drag shows.
Thank you. So we have Natasha, followed by Paul, followed by Michelle Peterson. Natasha.
Hello, my name is Natasha Moldavanu. I am a parent. My son attends Roosevelt High School. He's a senior. I'm very concerned with this extra personal finance course that has been assigned to senior students as a graduation requirement. I think it is great information for them to learn, but I don't think it is fair to give them a course that is not physically taught in the classroom and make it a requirement to pass a 50-question test in order to graduate. Question, is this even legal to do? To require students to self-teach and pass a test to graduate. They are not enrolled in independent school. They are in school to be taught physically in person. There is no help along the way with this course. Students are left to teach themselves, but you are making passing this final test for this course, sorry, I'm nervous, to a graduation requirement. This course offers no study guide, no Quizlets. There are 4 units in this course, and at the end of each unit there is a test, but the test disappears after you take it. How can they learn from their mistakes if they can't even see what answers they got right versus wrong? They cannot take any notes to take this test. And speaking with other parents, I'm hearing a lot of kids are failing this test. Some are taking 4 to 5 45 tries to pass. Doesn't that tell you there's something wrong here? When I called the school about the course and the test, the school counselor who you have in charge of this course, not a teacher, had no idea the test units were not accessible to view for kids to study. And reaching out to my sons.
Thank you. Your time is up.
Okay. Anyways, I think it needs to be relooked at.
Paul, followed by Michelle, followed by another Michelle Derby. Paul.
Good evening. It's good to be back. Pete, I love your beard.
Thank you.
I do. I think it's a wonderful beard. It's nice to see you, Brad. Nice to see you, John. It's good to see you. I taught at Granite Bay High School from 1997 to 2005. Those are great years. Ron Severson was probably one of the best principals I've ever had, next to, of course, Rob Hasty. But no, Ron was one of the best principals. And Ron believed in giving department coordinators books, and we used to get books such as From Good to Great by Jim Collins. And the department coordinators would read that. And then Ron said, hey, Paul, why don't you read this book, Courageous Leadership by Bill Hybels. And then we studied the book, actually. Lived in Dublin for 9 years. So I went from Granite Bay, then I went to Galt, and then I went to Dublin. And we took a band from 24 kids to 2 full-time music teachers in 9 years. Then I said, I want to go back to Placer County because I love Rob Hasty, and I loved Ron, and I said, let's go back, Diana. After 12 years, I said, whoa, we've changed. We've changed. It takes courageous leadership to stand up there and sit up there and come up with an answer. If you had said yes to the drag show, you would have upset people, and you said no, you would have upset people. You just got upset people. So I appreciate you saying no for right now, if no forever, because you have the information we don't. Okay? I love you. God bless you. Nice to see you, everybody.
Michelle Peterson, followed by Michelle Derby, followed by Jerry Prola. Michelle.
Good evening. Thank you. My name is Michelle Peterson. I am an alumni parent of 2 graduates from Oakmont High School, and I've done this in a while, so sorry. First of all, I would like to say congratulations to Oakmont Vikings and their show and their cheerleaders taking 2nd place. It is amazing. I also want to say thank you to the board. I know it might upset a lot of people for the revoking of the permit. When I heard about this, my biggest concern was on the landing spots pages that stated that to make sure to bring cash for tips for minors. That is not really, I don't think, a thing we want to teach our children, that this is how you earn something, is by performing for people and getting a tip in it. Since the permit was revoked, they have since changed all of their verbiage. It was cleaned, swept. Sure why? I have a feeling. I do hear a lot of comments in comparison of this show to cheerleaders. I personally have a cheerleader, one that is also at Jessup University. She does stunt. She does not and has never performed for tips. She did dance when she was little. She never performed for tips. I don't think our Powder Puff cheerleader boys do either. So that is my biggest concern, even though everybody needs a safe space.
Time is up.
Thank you, guys.
All right. From Michelle to Jerry to Paul. How did you get 2 in here? You don't get to come back up, Paul. All right. After instead of Paul again, then we'll go to Wendy View. Michelle.
Hey, I'm Michelle Derby. Thank you for shutting that down. And I believe that you guys were tricked into that, and that is not okay. Also, a drag show targeted towards children, putting dildos on them.
Turn around and speak to us, please.
That's disgusting. This is not a strip club, it's a high school. And I'll be damned if my daughters are there under the age of 18. You are not paying bills, you are not an adult, you are not responsible enough to know what's right and wrong until you are set off into the world. You do not put kids in an environment like that. So I appreciate the work that you guys have done, and I'm sorry that your guys' names get baffled in this because nobody was bullied into shutting it down. It was the fact that people lied about what was happening. And if they knew what was happening, I'm pretty sure they wouldn't agree with it because it is sick. It is very sick. That's called a strip club. Have them go to a strip club. It's also prostitution to ask for cash from minors. You don't ask for cash from children and at a high school. And I'm sorry, but if you've seen the drag shows, it is not okay. They are half naked, wearing weird stuff that looks like it's coming from the devil. So you guys really need to seek some help if you think it's okay for children that are innocent, that are still living under adults' roofs, to be okay with having that around them. It sounds like you might be a
Michelle,
pedo.
your time is up. Jerry. Followed by Wendy. Hold on, Jerry. Followed by Tiffany Coleman. Okay, Jerry.
Hello, all. Every single one of you, I want to thank. I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart. I have 2 grandchildren in the Roseville School District, and I want to say thank you for having the courage to do what you put it on this board to do, and that is cancel that permit. And also for your oversight into what they're teaching in our schools. Again, thank you very much for doing your duty.
Thank you. Next will be Wendy, followed by Tiffany Coleman, followed by Christina Hamada Wong. Wendy.
Good evening, Board of Trustees. Thank you so much for your swift actions this last week in regards to shutting down an inappropriate adult entertainment type of drag show that was misrepresented during the application process. Although the landing spot and organizers of Queer Joy would like to paint a narrative of parents that are against the LGBTQ community, that can't be farther from the truth. On February 27th, 7 nonpartisan organizations across the county and state with collectively over 25,000 parents sent out a press release. Those organizations include Gays Against Groomers, Our Duty, Moms for Liberty Placer County, Students First, Freedom Coalition, Our Children, Our Choice, and NorCal Freedom Alliance. Let's stick to the facts. They lied on their event application, plain and simple. A drag show is not a church fundraiser. End of discussion. These are the same people who look to cancel events like the father-daughter dances. Encouraging these children to dress in drag and bring cash tips is absolutely unacceptable and inappropriate. Incentivizing them is criminal. The small minority of parents in this room that are trying to force our community to accept drag shows by bullying parents and painting them as transphobic or homophobic is the narrative, as their narrative continues to be pushed, is getting very old. We will not allow the loud minority to push their agenda, destroy our children's innocence, and we will continue to protect all children.
Next we have Tiffany, followed by Christina, followed by Nicole Young. Tiffany.
I'm also here to thank our district for rescinding the permit to have a drag show on school property. It's my understanding that this is a show that solicited youth participation and encouraged financial transactions between minors and adults based on performance. Our schools are not the place for this type of activity, whether homosexual or heterosexual, during school hours or after school hours. The past few years, our schools have become the front line for the push and pull of intense social and cultural issues. This often makes our children the first to be affected and often wounded by passionate and emotional debates that are heavy even for more experienced adults. Often this has come from forces far beyond our local schools, and yet more frequently it is coming from members within our own communities. As this continues to happen, more and more families will choose to pull their children from public schools, causing separation and fracture in our communities, which we do not need. Schools and our school grounds are the center of our communities and are essential to the health and strength of our communities. There is no other place within our community that brings together our varied backgrounds the way school does. But this does not mean everything goes. It rather means that even more thoughtful care should be taken to safeguard our schools as ground where our children can spend their days focused on the basics of education without being continuously confronted by any number of additional concerns. I add my voice to others asking that our schools remain schools based on academics.
We have Christina, followed by Nicole, followed by Gwen Myers. And Christina, I just noticed that you had wanted to speak on public comment on closed session. I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. I can speak here. That's fine.
You can speak now.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Thanks. I'm a parent and a veteran teacher educating students for the last 24 years and a proud supporter of family and friends that are part of the LGBTQIA+ community. As a classroom teacher, my job was to educate all students without bias and create an environment where each student felt safe, heard, and valued. As a parent, my job is to raise two intelligent and good humans, armed with information that is factual and inclusive, not hateful and exclusionary. I find it frustrating and sad that this board is moving down a path that will exclude a population of students from being safe, heard, and valued. I want to remind the board of the mission statement of this school district. The Roseville Joint Unified School District prohibits discrimination, intimidation, harassment, including sexual harassment or bullying based on a person's, I'm going to paraphrase, gender expression, gender identity, generic information, or sexual orientation. If this board truly cares about all our students in Roseville, then I implore you to take this mission statement to heart and to move away from banning books and curriculum that include our LGBTQIA+ students and families. If you truly care about all students in Roseville, be the district that's inclusive, not exclusive. Be not fearful, but welcoming and willing to learn. I want to end my statement with part of the mission statement that's part of West Park High School, where we are tonight, and what my daughter is currently attending as a junior. We value people and we love to learn. That's what our district should be. Thank you.
Thank you. We have Nicole, followed by Gwen, followed by Deanna Poncetti. And Nicole, before you start, one card for two different things. You want to do 872?
No, take that off.
All right, thank you.
I just wanted to say thank you, board, tonight for acting swiftly and within the guidelines of board policy and district policy to keep all students safe. That's the main priority of this community, is to give all children a safe place, including the LGBTQIA+. Those students also need a safe place, but they need a safe place where they're not taught that selling their bodies for money is their only worth. They need to be uplifted and protected just the same as all the other children in our community. Thank you.
Thank you. So we have Gwen, followed by Deanna, followed by Dane Thompson. Gwen.
Hi, I am speaking as a community member who pays taxes, and I would like to congratulate the board on how they're working to keep this a wonderful high school district. Really appreciate it. I just want to re-emphasize the importance of focusing on education. I do believe that there's more extraneous things going on in the high schools than there should be. I think the kids should be focused on the basics that they need to have when they graduate from high school. Thank you.
Thank you. We have Deanna, followed by Dane, followed by James Jenkins. Deanna.
Hi, I'm gonna mix it up because I'm not here for either side. But I wanted to come and personally thank you publicly for, especially Mr. Rhoda, who's not even here, so please pass along my thanks, for not taking action at the last board meeting on the music and visual arts block grant. I'm really encouraged that the district is taking more time to look at it. I want to thank Mr. Landon for the email exchange we've had, and it just makes me feel really good about things going forward for our visual and performing arts. I know there's been a lot of talk with Proposition 28. I know also that as it stands right now, 80% has to go towards staffing. I know that we heard that there will be a waiver, but as it stands currently, guidelines for Proposition 28 won't be released until May. So I just want to make sure we don't make decisions based on assumptions that we don't know are true or not. And for Oakmont, that's where my kids go, so that's where my focus is. We will likely have to use 80% for staffing because of our declining enrollment. So I was very encouraged also, Mr. Constant, when you talked about the imbalance that's severely affecting both Oakmont and Roseville High School. So I'm hoping that we can make sure all of our schools thrive. I have an incoming freshman, and I need to make sure programs are there for kids at all school sites, not just our newest and greatest. Thank you.
Thank you. We have Dane, followed by James, followed by Paul DiLoretto. But before you start, Dane, you have one card, two topics. Are you coming back to the other? Or are you gonna? Okay. Thank you.
I just want to say thank you so much, board. You guys are modern day, just valiant and righteous heroes, in my opinion, for doing what you've done in the midst of all this conflict that we see these days. One thing I wanted to bring up that I don't think people have spoken about tonight, which is prevalent all around the world, is essentially the forced division and infighting that's being encouraged from external forces. Propaganda is something that's been around for over 100 years. In the first 6 months, when radio first came out, people were very easy to control going to the First World War when the United States did not want to go. And I'd like to point out to everybody today that division between subgroups of people is what is the topic that is being foisted upon all of us from people above us that essentially want chaos and confusion and destruction and cultural decline. And so for those of you that think I hear people talk about hate, or they say that somebody hates them, or they say that somebody's against them, or they say that somebody's trying to hurt their feelings, has anyone really done that more than all of us have experienced in our time as children? I mean, we've all been picked on, we've all been called names. I was called Doogie Howser, and I hated it, like when I was in elementary school. We've all been picked on. You're not unique. So the point is, we all go through things in our lives, and nobody really has the time or the energy to really focus on you to dislike you, because they're all busy with their own thing. So please don't try to ascribe motives or negativity to other people, and realize that we are all in this together. And
thank you. Your time is up.
Thank you.
Okay, we have James, followed by Paul DiLoretto, followed by Judy Sherfy. James.
Yes. Well, first of all, I want to thank you for taking action on this event because it's going to take us down a slippery slope if you didn't stop it right now. Number one, because as somebody alluded to earlier, if someone has a heterosexual show, then when are we stopping? So thank you for stopping it before it started getting out of hand, because we know that's coming next. And I think we should all come together and agree that some of my neighbors and friends who don't agree with me, that we all care about these children, these kids, okay? So the gentleman spoke before, he said ascribing that we hate him or something like that because this event got stopped. But here's the thing, we can do better than this. If you want to help these kids, we want to raise money for them, we can do better than this kind of show. I think we should come together, and I'll be glad to help. Whatever I can do to help put something together. I grew up with paper routes, getting things that I wanted to go to camp, shoveling snow back in Michigan where I'm from. So let's teach these kids a work ethic. And for those who don't agree with me, let's do it together.
I think, are you Paul? Okay, it's going to be Paul and then Judy and then Shemaine Phillips. Paul.
I want to thank the board for their work, the present board. I'd like to also thank the past boards. Almost 3 decades living in Roseville and paying taxes. And had 2 children, 2 boys that graduated from Roseville and graduated from college. So even though it was all due to hard work, we did at least appreciate it. I've always worked in safety my whole life. Retired deputy sheriff from the East Bay, registered Democrat. Seen both sides of the spectrum. I've seen children work, and I've seen adults in it. Really upset me was how this application was submitted, and the truth wasn't told all in the application. I fully support you turning that away because they weren't following as they were supposed to. It's plain and simple. So, that's about it. Thank you.
Thank you, Judy. Followed by Shemaine, followed by Keisha Williams. Judy.
I would like to start by thanking you from the bottom of my heart for all of the work that you guys put in, and for all the time that you put in and your heartfelt effort. So thank you, Board of Trustees. I have had 3 girls go through this district, and now I have grandchildren in the district.
Go ahead.
Am I 3 or 130?
You're 128 now.
Oh, I'm on it. Okay, so I wanted to emphasize I believe in mutual respect. I think mutual respect includes really healthy boundaries, and I don't feel comfortable with overt sexual expression of any kind in the school district. So if it were only a fashion show without any emphasis on sexually charged outfits, then there would have been no need to ask the audience to give tips. As I believe in mutual respect, then I also believe that associating money with sexuality does not ever show respect for the person. I would be here just as strongly if there were a bunch of women who are all dressed up very fancy with sexually charged outfits asking for tips from minors. Yeah. And that would not be that would not be good. So I would like assurance that this won't happen again. You know, I would like to have assurance that no group, I don't care who they are, is going to show up in some outfits that are really provocative, dance in ways that are equally provocative, and then get tips. So I think that should be banned completely. Did I make it? I did.
You did. 13 seconds to spare. All right, we have Shemaine, followed by Keisha, followed by Alana Mizon.
Hello, board. I want to also commend you and thank you for your work last week on the drag show. I definitely want to make clear to several people sitting in this room, this had nothing to do with anything, gay, straight, drag, otherwise it wasn't appropriate. We have many friends in the LGBTQ community, and this was not about LGBTQ. Even our LGBTQ friends didn't agree with it. I want to read a quote to you from a licensed mental health counselor, Dr. Ingrid Thrall. I'm a clinical sexologist. I work with clients that have experienced different types of sexual trauma. Exposure to sexual materials at an inappropriate too young age causes trauma, and it can take years to unravel. She said there is no doubt drag shows are sexual in nature, which means they have the potential to cause very serious trauma in children. She is a supporter of the LGBTQ community and said that protecting children should be a top priority. It was very clear to me, being someone in the marketing industry, that this was nothing more than a fundraising PR stunt by the Landing Spot early on at the expense of our district. So again, I just want to say thank you for protecting our children. I think we do need to support the LGBTQ community, but dancing for tips and having sexually explicit shows on campus is not it.
Thank you. Asia, followed by Alana, followed by Kevin Talia. By the way, you notice you don't have to take the full 90 seconds. Asia, go ahead.
Alright, I'll try to be short. Good evening, my name is Kasia Williams. Today I speak on behalf of California Parents Union. It is a union that represents parents, educators all across California. We would like to thank you for taking action last week and recognizing that not all events should be held on the school grounds. We appreciate that. I also wanted to bring to your attention that there is currently proposed Bill AB 659 that creates a mandate for school attendance. It creates a mandate for students going into 8th grade to receive a shot. There is no opt-out option, so our union is part of a broad coalition called Convention on Health Rights, and we are asking school boards all across California to look into that and consider writing a resolution or a letter and submit before March 15. The reason is at 7th grade checkup, about 30% of students decides not to get HPV shot when they are offered that, which raises our concern what's going to happen with the 30% students, whether they will be coerced into getting that shot. So we are just emerging from the pandemic, and the last thing we need is a new mandate for school attendance. So please consider taking some action. Thank you so much.
Thank you. All right, we have Alana, followed by Kevin, followed by George Weiss. Alana?
Hello, I am a lifelong resident of the city of Roseville, alumni of Granite Bay High School, and an LGBTQ ally. I've always loved and felt safe living here, but it seems not everyone gets to experience such a luxury. An injustice has been committed against an already marginalized community. Canceling the youth drag show that was to take place is cowardly. You'll say you're doing it to protect the children, but that's a lie. You'll claim drag queens are predators, but that's a lie too. You're really doing it to protect yourself from experiencing any sort of discomfort that comes with thinking critically about or challenging your own views. There's nothing predatory about the LGBTQ community. There's zero evidence to support that assertion. I'd more often see predators be fathers, husbands, community, and religious leaders. Queer children and their allies deserve a safe space to be themselves and support their loved ones. I'm incredibly disappointed with the cowardice and bigotry displayed by this district.
Next. All right, next we have Kevin, followed by George, followed by Meg Weiss. Go ahead, sir.
Hi, Kevin Kalia. I'm incoming 9th grader who's going to go to Granite Bay High School. I just want to touch on a couple different topics. So first on the drag show, one thing I want to say is that there's this thing called the Streisand effect, right? So the district called a lot of attention to this activity. I wouldn't have gone to the activity as a group. I think the group started great work. Because this happened, because it was on the radio, I gave a bunch of money. I understand they've more than funded their summer camp, and I hope that other people here will also consider donating. And I want the board to think about that when we talk about other things like the curriculum policy. Because this board bans books from the library. I want to be out there with my friends, handing them out on the sidewalk. Because you can't stop these kids from seeing ideas that exist out there in society, and you shouldn't want to. Frankly, anything these kids want to read is good by me. If they're reading instead of looking at their phones, I'm going to be happy. Whatever my sons want to read, I'm good with it. And before my time runs out, I want to echo the comments earlier about how disappointed I am in the silence of this board when people come in here and they call our teachers groomers and the board says nothing in response. And I just think it's incredibly disrespectful to our hardworking teachers. And I think that we don't pay them enough to take that kind of disrespect. We don't lose good teachers if it continues. Thank you.
All right, we have George, followed by Meg, followed by Sandy Marquez, and we're almost to the bottom of the list. We're getting there, folks.
Sir. When I was in high school 50 years ago, my best friend told me he was gay. I was shocked, but of course I knew what I had to do because I'd heard all about the gay agenda, about how gay people wanted to sexualize us as kids, about how gay people wanted to make straight people like me queer. So I said, I hope you know I'm not gay, and I ended our friendship. But you know what? I got over it eventually. I accepted him for who he was, and we became friends again, which makes it all the more disturbing to hear again, after 50 years, the same arguments, the same talk of a gay agenda, that a bunch of kids dressing up as members of the opposite sex and romping around on a high school stage and having fun are a threat to our children because drag shows are sexualizing them. To those who are saying such things, I say, what you are doing did not work 50 years ago, and it won't work now. You may have intimidated our school supervisor into canceling this event. You may have won a battle, but you will not win the war. And to our school board members, I say, my children are in the school system. They've heard much about bullying and how to handle bullies. It seems to me you could use some training here yourself. Because one thing my children learned was that giving a bully what they want will not make the bully go away. Thank you.
All right. Next up, we have Meg, followed by Sandy Marquez, followed by Jeremy Thomas. Meg, go ahead.
Hi there. I'm here tonight to express my disappointment in the recent decision to cancel the drag show. It was an attempt to shun, ostracize, and erase the LGBTQ community. I want to convey the concerns of many members of the LGBTQ plus community who are deeply hurt by this decision. And while I know I'm supposed to direct my comments to the board, I know this board will not speak when they're asked to, when people are being disparaged in the community. So I want to say to our LGBTQ community, you are loved, you are accepted, you are supported, your joy matters, and we are proud of you. The fact that this board, the district administration, depends on who you talk to, how it went down, but the fact that they were engaging with the extremists in our community to find out more about the event, rather than the event organizers themselves, is beyond disappointing. I saw your comments online. I've been writing letters to you for 2 months, haven't received comment yet. Online comment, oh, we'll get right on that. I am tired of seeing this board respond to a certain faction of our community and ignore others. And it's really disappointing that you're going to allow students or children and youth to be hurt by your bias.
All right. Next, we have Sandy, followed by Jeremy, followed by Barbara Bress. Sandy.
Yes, good evening, board. Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to come and applaud you. And thank you so much for being courageous and being discerning and doing the right thing for all of us in our community and the children that are here. I'm so saddened to see how much division there is going on right now, and I'm just praying for peace for everyone. I'm an ally of all students. I know that we all fall short, and we need forgiveness, and we need compassion, and we need love. So I just hope that everyone will go home and search for that inner peace to make the right decisions for their families, for the children and the communities. And again, I applaud you. Thank you for being courageous and taking the time that you've taken to work so hard to make these difficult decisions. I applaud all the other adults that were here speaking to recognize you and recognize the discernment and the good choice that you made. So thank you so much.
Thank you. All right, I'm going to remind you to queue up Jeremy. I see Jeremy coming. Barbara, I think that's Barbara. After that's going to be Kevin Cooper. Jeremy, go ahead.
Can you hear me? Yep. Imagine a society where mental illness is celebrated instead of treated, where child exploitation and sexualization are praised instead of chastised. Unfortunately, this isn't a nightmare anymore. It isn't make-believe. We can't just wake up and it disappears. It is reality, and this evil inches its way ever closer to each and every one of our children. Recently, the Landing Spot tried to host a drag show fundraiser for adults and minors at a school facility. They encouraged their patrons to bring cash for tips, as that is customary for these events. When word got out that they were encouraging tips for minors, their post was quickly edited. If what was stated wasn't wrong and wasn't exploiting minors, then why delete it? A similar event happened at the end of a rally over a week ago at Pleasant Grove High School in Elk Grove. Once again, minors put on a drag show without the parents' knowledge or consent, and to no one's surprise, the parents were furious. These events, many of which are riddled with pedophilia and child exploitation, belong nowhere near children. They should be illegal and need to be met with fierce resistance by any parent who truly cares for their child. I would also like to bring to light AB 659, which requires mandating the HPV vaccine for grades 8 through 12 as a requirement to attend. This is another bill backed by Scott Wiener, who not only doesn't have the best interests of our children at heart, but has created legislation legalizing pedophilia. This vaccine, much like the COVID vaccine, should be left to choice and not forced, especially since HPV.
Your time is up.
Ah.
All right. We have Barbara, followed by Kevin, followed by Christine, L-E-M something. All right, Barbara.
This is not my wording. This is from somebody who couldn't make it tonight because she was ill, Ellen Bach Riley. Here's the truth. Drag is not sexual. Like any other musical theater production, costumes, music, and dancing are involved. The singing is actually lip-syncing to a song vetted by adult leaders for appropriateness for this family-friendly event. Tips are donations collected in a butterfly net taken around the room after each performance. The youth performing are not tipped directly, do not have dollars thrown at them, and in fact never touch any of the donations. The costumes are fun and creative, but are not risque or sexualized. Most of the costumes actually cover more body parts than a typical cheerleader's outfit, and none would qualify as school dress code violations. Cheerleaders actually report that groping and sexual harassment are common, yet there's no accusation of the sexualization of children in that school-sanctioned activity. What it is an empowering and affirming opportunity for these youth to express themselves authentically and creatively in a super safe environment, to experience joy at being supported as they take the stage with an audience full of loving family, friends, and allies cheering them on. We knew that LGBTQ plus youth who feel supported by at least one adult in their lives, be that a parent, a teacher, a minister, or another trusted adult, are much more likely to thrive at home, at school, and in life. They are then far less likely to suffer poor mental health, engage in risky behaviors.
Thank you. Your time is up. Kevin, followed by Christine, followed by J.P. Miller. Kevin, go ahead.
Hi, my name's Kevin. I came tonight to
Can you pull the mic up closer, please?
Sure, I can probably do that too. My name is Kevin Cooper, and I brought some documents tonight that I was able to collect. I want to be very clear that my daughter was a cheerleader. My kids, some of them were involved in a lot of stuff, and I've never seen cheerleaders or pageant girls dance at events where there's money that spectators give them to encourage them to do it better. So I printed out basically two of the ads from the event. One of the ads has a QR code attached to it that links you to a registration packet that is designed for students, minors, to either sign up to dance or to support the event. And it asks what songs and so forth, but it never asks for a parent's signature. Both of my kids play sports and after-school activities. I had to sign for everything. Kind of weird. In addition to that, the Placer County Democratic Party ran an ad
in Sacramento asking people to come and protest. Both of those documents are in my little packet. Whenever I can give it, I'll give you guys a couple copies. Because I think it's important to understand that there's no events that kids can go to without parent signatures, and there's no events where people throw money or put it in a bucket to make them do it better. And I think it's important that we understand that other people who came from outside our town to give us their opinion. Anyway, thank you for your time.
Before you leave, if you're intending to give that to anyone, give it to that gentleman right there in the white shirt right behind you. Christine, followed by J.P. Miller, followed by Tammy Siller. Christine.
Hi, my name is Christina May.
Get close to the microphone so we can hear you.
So I had two children who attended the Granite Bay High School, and one of them is graduated last year. The other one never finished because she was severely injured by the Gardasil vaccine. And I wanted to let you know that this is in your best interest to stop this new law once the mandated vaccine, because it causes terrible burden on the school. So as soon as my daughter was affected, she starts to have allergies everywhere, and then to start to be unable to focus, unable to do her homework, having trouble to walk, ended up in a wheelchair. She tried to stay in school, but she kept on going down and down and down, and that caused a lot of meetings. We tried to add filters to stop her allergic reactions everywhere, and there was so many things, right? So it really makes a big difference for the students. It's a big risk on health. I used to think that my daughter was the exception, but now because it's been 6 years, I've been doing a lot of research, and I've seen that even in the clinical trials, there were several girls who had these same symptoms: unable to study, unable to stand, trouble to eat. To this day, my daughter, her biggest issue is to be able to eat. So they have trouble in breathing. So this vaccine includes a new form of adjuvant, a different form of aluminum, and aluminum is a known.
Thank you, but your time is up.
So please make it stand. Take this vaccine.
J.P. Miller, you're tall, so make sure you pull that microphone up, followed by Tammy.
Hi. My name is J.P. Miller. I'm a local resident, retired military, and also a retired professional educator. This was brought to my attention through a call to action from the Placer County Democrats, so I decided to look into it. I decided to look at who was involved, what was involved, and were there any particular limitations that you should or should not have applied. I looked at the sites regarding and information on LGBTQ+. Every one of these groups, by their own definition, is based on sexual behavior or sexual attraction. I looked at what a drag show was, particularly a group called Matador, which is associated, I believe, with the performer RuPaul. These shows are supposed to be outrageous, lascivious, push bounds, be suggestive, and by definition require tips for performers to be given for the behavior that they're involved with that verges on as much as possible in, quote, legally sexual behavior in public in a gay bar. That's the words I recall. So I thought, wow, that's pretty interesting. Why would that be limited? Aside from a host of psychological data that's already been discussed today, I looked at particular California codes. There's a mountain of them. All the way up to the state code, and I believe it's 311 and 312, which talk about obscenity. And very clearly in those laws are requirements to prevent children from being exposed to anything that's obscene. Now, I've heard a number of people say...
Thank you, sir, but your time is up. Hey, Tammy, you may have noticed I didn't call anyone after you because you get the distinguished position of being our last speaker. Uh-oh. All right.
Oh, see, I'm not last, so.
All right. So hold on one second. We're not going to start your timer yet. If you turned in a card, but we don't have it in my possession, just stand over here, and I will have you come up, and we'll double check. We might have mixed them up here a little bit. Tammy, go ahead, and we'll sort everyone else out next.
All right, greetings, board members and passionate people. It's nice to be in a room where so many people care. There seems to be two sides to this issue, but there's one thing that hasn't been brought up. While we argue whether or not a transvestite group belongs on a high school campus, there's a much bigger issue. Since the mid-70s, when Twiggy first made her debut, women were being told they needed to be built like 12-year-old boys to be fashionable. This brought rise to anorexia and bulimia. It ruined how young and old women view themselves. I mean, how many people here today allow a scale to decide their self-worth every morning? We are experiencing the disappearance of the American woman. We allow this making of an impossible task to regulate how we are to feel about ourselves. We have men winning beauty contests because the perception of what a woman is can be reproduced in a man, simply because we allowed them to tell us this is the example we must strive to. It seems to me that adolescent girls don't need more confusing input into how they're supposed to look and act. These things should be taught at home. It's part of raising a child. School is for learning art, science, history, English, and math. These are the subjects many are in need of more attention. Let's keep the greatness of the American woman alive. We don't need to be boxed into corners. We need to be free to figure out who we are without all the background noise. And thank you for your...
Okay. By a quick show of hands, who over here is planning on speaking? Show me your hands. Okay, those are our last three speakers on this item. Oh, two others. Okay. So these five, you're just going to come up one at a time and state your name, and then go ahead and give us your talk.
Good evening. My name is Keith Ciadat, and I'm the parent of a 10th grader at West Park High School. I have a daughter, Chilton. I'm a member of the West Park Band Boosters, and I've served the last 3 years as president of the Chilton Middle School PTC. Quite honestly, I'm incredulous that I even have to be here this evening to voice my concerns over the possible banning of books and meddling with a curriculum just to appease the few who want to impose their morals on the many. And I know that there's objection whenever someone like me accuses boards of banning books, but let us be intellectually honest and admit that banning books is in essence what is being considered. It is bad enough that our schools have increasingly become war zones where our kids have to practice active shooter drills. Now we add to those fears and feelings of diminished safety an environment where boards such as this foment discord in the community by entertaining the fears of the moral minority, many of whom do not even reside in the RJUHSD geographic area. What you are doing is making students of schools like West Park and throughout the district feel unwelcome, unsupported, and unaccepted. You put a bullseye on their back simply for political calculation and to score points with your supporters to further your personal political aspirations and feed their fears. By doing so, you other these kids and normalize their mistreatment and make them feel unsafe in their own schools. You also devalue and disregard the very educators under your employ. When my son started his freshman year here, I asked one of his teachers a question about some of the books they would be reading, and the teacher had to look around and whisper their answer because of the environment of fear we have created for our teachers who are attacked just for books they may or may not want to bring into the classroom. At a time when the United States...
Your time is up. Next.
Sorry. My name is Strider. I'm a student here at West Park, and I wanted to speak on the topic of banning books. I'm currently enrolled in ethics studies, and this has been a very hot topic for us. I'm fortunate to be provided a space to speak, so thank you for having me. And I want to ask, what do we gain from banning books? What we lose is the ability to learn about things we wouldn't normally encounter. What we lose are opinions that we can hold up against our own. And what we lose are a chance to build our own ways of thinking using the wide variety of resources we've been provided. As a student, I believe I have the best chance of success when I have as many resources as possible. And as parents, educators, and people who care about the well-being of your youth, I trust that you agree and want nothing but the best for our chances at success. Whether we agree with the content we're reading or not is neither here nor there, because both scenarios are beneficial academically. If we agree with the available content, we build connection and reasoning skills. And if we disagree, we're provided an opportunity to assess the other argument and use perception and skills in contrast to express their beliefs in regards to the text, no matter where they lie. Both scenarios provide us and prepare us to interact with the world around us, and isn't that the purpose of a true education? Social issues become educational issues, as we've seen in our history classes when it comes to world issues. I encourage you to think about this, and thank you for your time.
Thank you.
My name is Elizabeth, and I am a West Roseville taxpayer since 2007, so I feel like I'm kind of being this. Just kidding. So I actually like to start with the tie that binds. I'm quite certain that most parents in this community prioritize the safety and happiness of their children. I'm sure that most of us want little more for our kids than to grow into successful, thriving people who contribute and enjoy life. I also believe that most parents have deep fears about what might derail or prevent these teens from achieving their goals. Heaven knows these are years rife with temptations, errors, missteps, and flat-out mistakes. I grieve with all of you for the childhood that has been transformed into too much responsibility and permanence for these immature impulses that these kids have. Social media, technology, and an increasingly litigious society full of distracted humans has left many of these kids to figure out big life lessons on their own the hard way. That being said, I also believe that the freedom, happiness, and safety of my kids is not more important than the freedom, safety, and happiness of yours. I know that the vast majority of Americans oppose book bans for a number of reasons, not the least of which are critical, important fact that seeing oneself represented, reading about one's own experiences, and learning of heroes and villains, doctors and morticians, teens and elders just like you matters. Being a teenager, mucking through the messes of high school is so hard. It feels so lonely for so many.
But your time is up.
Okay, so
Next.
freedom for all of the kids, including the LGBTQIA.
All right. By my count, we should have just a couple left. You're one, and then. Okay. It's okay. Hello.
Sherry Scott. I'm an alumni of Roseville High School. I graduated in 1961.
Can you turn around and address us, please, ma'am? Sherry. Sherry, turn around and talk to us so we can hear you.
I can't believe it has become as divided as it is. This used to be a wonderful, cohesive community. We had gays. We had Mexicans. We had Italians. We had blacks. We had white Europeans. What is this infight? Say is, I want to thank you people for sitting up there and taking all of this diversity and still being able to smile, still being able to get in and represent what this community should be. Thank you.
Thank you. Then we have one more after that, right? Anyone else? One more. You're the last one. Hello, sir. Your name and where
Thank
away.
you, Board. My name is Brian Faircloth, and I reside in Roseville. I have a little bit different perspective on listening to tonight. I do support your decision. We'll leave it at that. But I would tell you that the way that this stuff is being run about what we're doing to our kids all starts at the state level. When the state medical director shut down the schools, told the kids that if you ever see your friends again, if you ever see your grandparents again, and if any of them ever get sick, no matter what, or if they die, my God, it's because you didn't listen to the state medical director. Now you can look at all the statistics about what happened to teen suicides, to the derangement that they have now, and what I've heard tonight is a lot of folks, a lot of different groups are laying a lot of this on the board because of the decision that they made. But the children have now with shall I say, problems in their life all reside from the shutdown that was forced on them, and with politicians from Sacramento saying, you know what, if you ever associate with anybody again, and if you don't wear a mask, you know what, you're responsible for their death. That was hideous. Thank you.
Thank you. Now we have reached our distinguished last speaker on open forum.
have
She's not as calm as she looks. All right.
Hi, my name is Brenda Howard. Can you feel the anguish of a child in school who never sees themselves in a book or a lesson plan? Representation matters. I'm LGBTQ and a survivor of childhood sexual abuse, and I find it disgusting and insulting that groups are attacking the hardest working, most essential role models in our children's lives by calling them groomers. When will this board make a statement defending our teachers? When will you stop cowering to Greg Farrington, Matthew Oliver, and Tanner DeBella? Teachers and librarians don't work to 5. They care for kids 24/7. They get involved, support, empathize, protect, and inspire their kids year after year. They don't get rich doing this. They are being paid by super PACs, like some of the groups attacking them. Teachers show up every day to help the future of this country be the best version of themselves. Committing slander and libel against teachers and librarians is pathetic and cowardly. Banning books is shameful and un-American. Lying about groomers endangers children more than drag shows ever will. It's a fact that most groomers are family, friends, and religious figures. Denying all children the truth about what groomers are decreases their ability to advocate for their own boundaries. Denying BIPOC children the right to learn their own history doesn't heal generational trauma. Denying queer children the right to be seen adds to the occurrence of self-harm and suicide.
Your time is up.
When you ban books, that you are promoting depression.
Your time is up. Time is up. Hey. We have reached the end of our public comment. Thank you all for the most part, maintaining decorum. We are going to get into our main agenda shortly. We have one more comment period, and that's for RSEA. But am I seeing a no there, Natalie, or? Come on up, Natalie. For those of you leaving, if you could just keep the talking down until you get outside, we'd appreciate it. Natalie, give him a second here. I'm going to ask you, please, to be quiet on the way out. We still have business to conduct. Always work with my kids. Right. If we wait about 30 more seconds, we'll be good. I think it's down to a mild roar. All right, we're going to let Natalie give the RSCA report. Natalie.
All right, here we go. First off, good evening. Thank you again for this platform, being able to come back and communicate about what's going on. It's really value that. Pretty much right now, we're on the second round of negotiations. We haven't come to an agreement yet, but we really appreciate the collaborative effort and be able to address some of the concerns with public safety. There you go. Okay. Public safety that we as teachers have and concerns in classrooms and also district-wide in the overall environment. Just because we hear things in the news, it's a great time to have a conversation, and we really value the collaborative effort that we have. Second off, we want to say thank you to Dr. Moore, Mr. Basham, and also Craig Carbedian, who has actually sat through. Did I say Craig? Okay, good. That sat through hours of our MOU conversations about dual enrollment. We really value the time, and I want to say thank you for that time to talk and discuss it out. We think it's an ability to have some excellent moving in our district. However, if we just slow it down to make sure we're doing it correctly and make sure that we're hitting all students with this opportunity, including what it's designed for, is that disproportionately impacted group and making sure they have that voice and that excellence to be successful. And then finally, before we go, as things shift and change, we're constantly developing policies and cleaning up with new procedures. And as information gets out, I ask that we just step back a second and look at our communication system and making sure that everybody's getting the same communication, because it's embarrassing when you come to a meeting like, hey, did you know about this? And you're like, wait, what? Where'd that come from? And as we continue to grow, as we just take time to
reflect on our process of communication and just maybe tweak a little bit to make sure everybody has it. Other than that, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Well, 2 hours into the meeting, now we're ready to start our business. So we are going to jump into our consent agenda. Are there any board members wishing to pull anything from the consent agenda? If not, I will entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda. One motion, do we have a second? All right, we'll do a quick roll call vote. Heidi? Me? Yes. Carl?
Yes.
No.
Yes.
All right, that passes 4-0 with one not present. Okay, we're moving into our action matters now. We have quite a few of them. We're going to start off with item 8.1, which is the second interim financial report. Joe, I believe you are going to take us through that. Is that correct? All right, come on up. I'll give you a little more than 90 seconds. You stand on this side of the mic, so when you're looking that way, you're talking. There you go. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you. So I think we're all set up here. Yep. Okay. So this is our second interim update. So this is one of our last updates for the current year budget. It's we've gone through the financials and made our updates as of January 31st. And good to go. So we have a couple updates when we adopt our budget in June. We then come back and provide revisions after the state adopts their budget. We have the first interim, and then we have our second interim, which we're talking about today. And you can see the summary of some of the changes there. Really small, so hopefully you have it larger on your screen there. But for this, on the revenue side, when you see positive numbers, that's good. If you see a negative number, that's a reduction in revenue, not as good. So while the largest number is the decrease in the arts, music, and instructional material discretionary block grant, the good thing about that is it's just one-time money. And some of the positive impacts, predominantly on the special education side, we see a positive $790,000 increase in revenue. And so that is anticipated to be ongoing increase in special ed revenue as the state's made adjustments to their special ed formulas. So overall, I think it's been pretty good news on the revenue side. And you can see on the expenditure side, we had some changes. One I would just highlight a little bit is our athletic trainers. We've had a really hard time finding athletic trainers. We signed a contract about a year or two, but we don't pay the money unless they actually get us the trainers. So we're continuing to work on that and trying to make sure we have athletic trainers at all of our sites. So we're not, we had some savings this year, but actually we would rather have spent that money if we could have got the trainers. So that's something we're still just working on. I'm not going to go over these items in detail, but these are the highlights from our adopted budget to our second interim. And what I like to go over is our multi-year projection. One of the things you'll see, it's very small, is this is the first interim. When you compare the first interim to the second interim, you'll see quite a bit of an increase in revenues that are projected from the state. That has to do predominantly with the governor's budget that came out in January, which was much better than we were pretty planning conservatively. And now it's coming out that the statutory COLA is expected to be higher. So we've now accounted for that projection. We also update our other funds. Just one I'll highlight is in our cafeteria fund. We've seen growth in revenue there over the last couple of years as the state has begun funding free food for all of our students. And so we've seen a huge increase in the number of students taking advantage of that. And it's allowed us to increase our expenditures there with vending machines that are just about to be released at all of our schools and some additional improvements to our cafeteria facilities. And this last one is the update to our facility funds that we continue to use to upgrade our facilities usage. So our next update will be coming back to the board. We're going under budget season right now, so we're meeting with sites and departments, preparing our budget for next year. We'll have the governor's May revise anticipated in mid-May, so we'll provide an update to the board at that time. As well as May 25th, we're projecting to have a public hearing for our budget for next year, as well as our LCAP. And then the schedule is on June 8th, we'll be adopting that LCAP budget.
Joe, if you could go to slide 7. That's the second interim. You know, I ask you the same question all the time. Talk about the surplus deficit spending, how we're looking as far as reserves. I just want everybody to be able to hear it.
In regards to like the reserve cap.
Yeah.
So when we look through this each year, the state has set a reserve cap of 10%. So when we plan our budget for next year, right now in the second interim, we are projected to have 17.37%. We also haven't finished negotiations and finished planning for budget next year. We can have a budget that's at or below 10%. And you can see those. The items I highlight are some of the most important ones. The ones in yellow show whether we're at surplus or deficit spending. So you can see quite a bit of surplus in 23, 24, and 24, 25 currently. And then the final line is our ending fund balance after all our reserves are taken into account.
Any questions from board members?
Is that anticipated to continue? Do you know?
Yes, currently it is. The state has not talked about changing that. They've actually received a lot of positive feedback from that. I've read articles that by law students are required to be at school every day. So why not provide food for somewhere they're qualified or required to be at? So it's been received pretty positively. So I've not heard any talk of the state moving it.
Any other questions? I do not have any speaker cards. Just confirming we don't have anyone who wants to speak. Okay. Any comments, or we can entertain a motion? Ready? All right, we have a motion by Heidi and a second by Marla. Any discussion before we take a vote? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? None. That passes 4-0. Thank you. Our next is home to school transportation plans. I believe that's you as well, right?
I have this one next one. No presentation for PowerPoint for this one. But this transportation plan was provided as kind of like a first reading at a recent board meeting. This is a new process as the state has just modified a bit how they provide transportation funding to our district. It was really, really good news because the old formula was based on 1978 data. Roseville was a lot different in 1978. We had a whole lot less students and population, and so the amount of funding we received from the state was very, very, very small. So this was welcome news that we're going to start getting more funding to provide for transportation. We've continued, even though we didn't get much funding, to provide pretty good transportation. This plan is another part of that process. We need to have this plan, reach out for feedback. I did make one change, I believe it was Heidi, I think you mentioned it, just for clarification of who we provide transportation for. It's for all students who qualify through special ed, we're required to provide transportation, as well as we currently have a minimum walking distance of 3 miles that anybody outside the 3 miles we provide transportation for as well. I know I've talked to a board member too. We would entertain potentially providing more transportation. It's something we'd be interested in doing. But right now, there's a very, very severe shortage of bus drivers. It's very difficult to find them, get them properly trained and certified. But that's something that we will consider and continue to consider. It's not so much the funding issue; it's about finding those actual drivers. So, if any of you know anybody who may be interested, it is a good job with the pension, and we love to. Anytime we get people, we're looking at helping them get through that process to get trained and certified. Make people in our department. So just do that little plug in. So.
Thank you. Do we have any questions from board members? No?
Are these one-time dollars or continued resources?
So the transportation funds are continued resources.
And how do these funds enhance the program? In other words, what are we able to do now than we weren't able to do before?
We're able to maintain our funding. We're able to look at providing raises so that we can attract bus drivers, so that we can have a good salary schedule to attract and retain bus drivers. And potentially, if we can find more drivers, I think we can entertain expanding our transportation, like lowering that walking distance. And things like
I don't have any speaker cards for this, so with that, I will entertain a motion if you'd like to offer one. We have a motion to approve. Do I have a second? I have a motion and a second. Any discussion before we take a vote? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye, that's unanimous 4-0-1. All right, 8.3, Joint Construction and Use Facilities Agreement, Addendum C for Antelope and Antelope Community Park.
Yes, we have two main joint use agreements in our district. One is with Sunrise Parks and Rec, that's for joint facilities by Antelope High School. The other one is by Wood Creek, where we had shared facilities with the city of Roseville. So we periodically, typically each year, work with those agencies, make changes, amendments to those joint use facilities. One of the things that we've been working on with both groups is helping provide more of the maintenance costs. When these contracts were signed many years ago, maintenance of the facilities wasn't nearly as expensive as it is today. And so over time, we've increased our share of helping with utilities and maintenance costs. So this is an updated agreement with Sunrise Park and Rec at Antelope. We've had a really great relationship with them. And they helped us out at West Park High School. When West Park didn't have a swimming pool or tennis courts, we were able to work it into the contract where they would be able to go to Sunrise Park and Rec and have a swimming pool and tennis courts to use. Now those have just been finished, completed, so West Park has their own facilities. We've had a great working relationship with them, and so this is an update to the contract. We essentially pay $50,000 a year. I like this change. It used to be we pay a smaller amount, but we pay a big portion of the pool utilities. And the pool utilities have gone up a lot, and it made it very difficult. This is basically a flat amount we can budget for and plan for, and it still is. Still, we're able to review with them each year. If the utilities come in, start getting really high or really low, we can adjust the amount to the rate. Staff recommends approval of this addendum to the contract.
Thank you. I want to ask questions of my two favorite board members way at the end. You were supposed to throw a pen at me if I forgot to check in with you. I forgot, like on 3 items. So you get to go first. Any questions? Concerns? No? Okay. Sorry about that. Remember, you're allowed to throw things. Okay. Any questions from our? No. Just the two of them.
Using like the swimming pool, tennis court, and ball fields at the park next door.
Yeah, it's predominantly used for our athletics, our after-school activities, but we do have use for, like in PE, particularly like the swim unit, because we don't have a pool on campus, so we use that pool for the swim unit, and there are times for PE when they use the ball fields throughout the year. So.
Hey, I have no cards from the public, so I will entertain a motion on this. Do we have a second? Alright, start at the far end. Otto. Good? Both of you, look at that. 2 thumbs up. Alright, from the board, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None. So that passes 4-0-1. Alright, we're going to move on to item 8.4, which is resolution to approve the reduction in the classified workforce. Is that you, Brad? Yeah.
2, 3. There we go. Okay. We had a department secretary position that's been funded using the expanded learning opportunities we had for the last 2 years. That particular position was used to help with some COVID-related job responsibilities, including contact tracing. The ELO funding is coming to an end. And what funding we have left is allocated for other things at this point. So we have a lack of funds to continue the position. Frankly, I'm not sure that we need particular responsibilities that are being done. So we are asking the board to approve Resolution 2302 we adopted to eliminate one department secretary position effective June 30th, 2023. That employee has been notified. They'll have the opportunity to apply for other positions that they may be qualified for, or if they so choose, they can also remain on our 39-month rehire list.
Thank you. Any questions for Brad on this? I have no cards from the public. Do we have a motion on this? Motion to approve. Do we have a second? All right, this is a resolution, so we're going to do it by roll call, starting all the way down with Autumn. Leading? Yep. Okay. Heidi? Marlo?
Yes.
Me? Yes. That passes 4-0-1 as well. We're now going to move on to item 8.5, Roseville Police Department MOU.
Good evening. At point 5 is an amendment to our MOU with the Roseville Police Department for the SRO services they provide to our district. We have had an incredible several decade relationship with the Roseville Police Department. I'd be remiss not to take a little bit of time to thank them for that relationship. I know we tend to focus a lot on the safety that they provide to the campus, but I can tell you over the years that I've been on the campuses in this district that our SROs do a fabulous job of creating relationships with the kids on the campuses, connecting with them, educating them, answering questions, and they're there for our parents and our staff. Obviously, they provide an added layer of safety on our campuses, but I just don't want that aspect of what they do to be missed. The Roseville Police Department absolutely understands the importance of community policing and those relationships. So before you is amended MOU for the next 3 years with the Roseville Police Department. This MOU will cover the 5 high schools within the city of Roseville. Remember that we are serviced by 3 different police agencies. Granite Bay is serviced by the Placer County Sheriff's Department, and Antelope is serviced by the Sacramento County Police Department. So this is a 3-year contract. Of note, in there is a 3% increase in the 23-24 school year and a 3% increase in the 24-25, with no increase in the 25-26 school year. And staff recommends approval of the amendment of the RPD SRO MOU. That was
very sure I got that one right. It's a lot of points in Scrabble.
It was.
All right. Any questions starting with the all right? Oh, any questions? I have no comment cards. I just want to echo Rob's comments about Roseville PD. We appreciate you. Make sure they all know that. We appreciate them not only here at our meetings, but on our campuses. And Rob, you're right. It's a lot more than just safety. They do a lot of great things on our campus. We're very thankful for them. With that, I'll ask for a motion on this issue. Motion. Do I have a second? We have a motion and a second. Including our board members, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None. That passes 4-0 with 1 absent. Roll right into our next item. Rob 8.6, our RJUHSD Comprehensive Safe School Plans.
Yes, so you were all given the comprehensive safe school plans for each of our schools in the district. As those of you who have been on the board for a while are aware, and those new of us, we do this review every year, and the intent is to make sure that we are monitoring on a yearly basis a number of components on safety on all of our school campuses, and that can include everything from crisis response plans to student discipline, to student dress code, ingresses, egresses, and the intent of our site safety teams is to work on a monthly basis at their sites to do reviews of their campus to make sure that safety is a top priority on the campus. We all know that if our campuses aren't safe, our kids don't feel safe, they don't feel comfortable on campus, and that obviously is an impact on the educational environment for our kids, and we don't want that. So our site safety teams spend a lot of time, and that includes members of the community, students from the campuses, local law enforcement, emergency services. We take all of that information from all of those groups to try to make sure that all of our campuses are as safe as possible, and these reports are intended to reflect a lot of that good work. I do want to be clear with the board that what is not in here is a lot of the sensitive information that we use during the crisis intervention. The reason for that is obviously we don't want to give away every secret of what we do on campuses. I can tell you that while the state requirement is 2 drills a year, that in our district we do monthly drills, and those drills include lockdowns, evacuations, active threat scenarios. And I can tell you that the assistant principals each of the sites and their SROs do an incredible job of making sure that our students are as well prepared as possible for those events. And lastly, I want to say thank you to the district for making safety such a priority. We have incredible programs and people in place. Just to name a few of the relationships we have the real-time crime relationship with RPD that we've talked about. We've got cameras on all of our campuses, SROs on all of our campuses, Catapult system, which is an early warning system for us to make sure that we're able to support students that are in need. Raptor system, campus monitors. We're doing vulnerability assessments like every other year, so there's a lot going on in our schools to maintain safety. With that, the board recommends that, staff recommends that the board approve the comprehensive safe school plans for the 2023 school year.
You. Starting at the far end, any questions? No. All right, from the board, any questions? Any of them individually or collectively?
Lots more work yet to be done, and it will be better next year.
We know it will be. It gets better every year.
Without a doubt.
All right, that I will entertain a motion for this item. Motion to approve. Do I have a second? Motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
None opposed. That passes 4-0-1. All right, now we're going to get into the second main event of the night, 8.7. I just want to frame a few things before we get started here. I know April's going to lead us through this. One of the things that we've been doing as we've been approaching this issue is really trying to clarify the multi-layers of roles that we have. We have a lot of different people at a lot of different levels that interact in this process. You know, obviously, we have the state laws that are constructed by our state legislature. The State Board of Education that has one set of rules for K-8, another set of rules for 9-12. We have to follow all of those frameworks and rules. We as a board have a very small sliver role, and that is to form policy and approve administrative regulations that essentially set up the sort of sandbox in which our administrators and teachers work in. We give them sort of the tools, the shovels, the pails, the sand, and the boundary, and we say go do it. And then our job comes back in a oversight role, making sure everyone stays in the sandbox and plays nicely. Really, the real work is done by the administrators and the teachers, site principals, and our community who get together to work on this curriculum. I want to talk specifically about sort of framing what we're doing tonight and what we're not doing tonight. First of all, I think it's always good to make sure we know what we're not doing. Today, this board is not taking action to approve or disapprove any specific curriculum on this agenda item. We are not approving or disapproving any specific textbooks or supplemental materials on this agenda item. I know there's some people that thought we were. That's another school district. We're not talking about banning books. We're not talking about any of those things on this issue. What we are doing, and I think we sort of laid this out back in January, is we're working through as a board to align our policies and our administrative regulations with the state laws and the guidelines to make sure that we have a process that conforms with state law and is transparent. We're reviewing a number of changes tonight that the administration is recommending in the practices. One of the things we found in January is we had some gaps in practice. We had some things that hadn't been, some curriculum that hadn't been approved, so we're going to talk about sort of how we fill those gaps. And they're also going to talk about how they propose to align our district's policies with our district practices board approved policies and administrative regulations. Our goal as a board is to ensure that all stakeholders have insight into the process that we're going to be using going forward and have access to the process in appropriate time. We're going to go through that today, sort of not only who has what role, but where those roles engage in the process. At the end of today, our goal is to approve potentially changes to our board policy and our administrative regulations if the board concurs with the changes that are proposed by staff, and provide some direction to our staff on how to move forward in the process that they are going to explain to us that they intend on using, so that the actual curriculum reviews and the approval of new curriculum and supplemental materials and texts and things of that nature can come to the board in the future. So we're going to talk about the process, we're going to talk about the policy, we're not going to talk about specific curriculum items. Keeping in mind that we have to do this, we have to have resolution to this so that we can actually get to what many of you are here to talk about today, and that's specific curriculum and supplemental materials and textbooks. So hopefully that's where we're going to go tonight. April, hopefully I didn't surprise you with any of the expectations that we have. We'll have April do her presentation. We'll have an opportunity for questions and clarifications, and I got a lot of forms up here, so everyone will have an opportunity to give us their input. So with that, April, fire away.
All right, thank you, President Constant, Board. We appreciated the dialogue January 12th, where we looked at these and got some direction and put this plan together to address some of the gaps that we saw. And one of the things that you asked us to do was to identify and prioritize some of the gaps. There was a discussion, we can't do everything overnight, but how do we want to move forward? And that's what we're bringing to you today is that proposal as President Constant just referenced. So we first looked at gaps in policy. We looked at Ed Code together January 12th. We looked at our policies, and based on that conversation, discussion, and further review, we found that there was indeed a gap where Ed Code specifies shall promote parent engagement and involvement in the process, and our policy said may provide opportunities, and we found a distinction between that, providing an opportunity versus promoting, and that urgency of shall versus may. So we are proposing, and you have attached as an exhibit, policy that would actually change that. So we would change our policy from may provide to shall promote those opportunities for involvement. And in fact, ours goes on beyond not only parents, but the community and that broader group. And that's certainly okay to go more involvement, but we need to at least hit that minimum of Ed Code, and that was one of those gaps. The other recommendation related to that was more of a procedural. As you know, we've been removing more of the forms from our policy manual. It's not that we don't use forms, it's just we don't have them as part of the adopted. In fact, we've updated them, make them more professional, maybe adjust them over time. And so it's the removal of that piece. And so there's a removal of the reference to that form as well that you'll see in the attached exhibit. So that was the Ed Code and policy piece that we were proposing. I'll pause in case there are questions or comments.
Questions on this portion? Remind me, were there any changes to the AR? Or you're going to get to that?
It was, yes, the AR was referenced to remove the form. So it's the deletion of that last sentence, the reference to the form was the only edit there.
Okay.
And then the actual form being deleted. So there are 3 changes there: policy, regulation, and form. The most of the gaps that we found were in practice. And so we pulled some of the ones that we're addressing tonight. Some of them are explicitly addressed and some of them are within and embedded. So I'll be, my goal is to explain and point to each of them as we go through how we're addressing them. But one of the biggest gaps was that we found a number of courses that we offer in our system that we had no evidence of board approval of.
And again, it may have happened in the past. We didn't have great records to show that, and interviewing some of my predecessors that seem to be consistent in understanding that there's a gap in practice. And so that is one thing that we're looking to address at a large scale. We're talking over 600 courses that perhaps still need to go through that board adoption process. We wanted to clarify the levels of approval, so we would get a gap in what is the process, making sure that that's clear, what is supplemental versus core, what is a class-wide read, choice book, even getting more questions, excerpts, right? We need to clarify a lot of those components in the process. We need to address the time it takes, and so I've updated the timeline tonight so you can see kind of what we're anticipating that looking like, and trying to streamline when it's appropriate and yet not rush. Make sure that we're thoughtful and thorough. So we'll be talking through that, trying again to have that fine line between it feeling cumbersome and onerous for staff and less timely, whereas wanting to have that shall promote meaningful involvement throughout. We did address already the SILT piece, where we had feedback from some of our guest presenters. We had a process for them leaving after presenting, didn't feel great. We now have an open invitation. Some of them can choose to leave based on time constraints, and others choose to stay, and that's certainly welcome now. And wanting that point person or place, where do we get that SILT information? So we'll talk about communication quite a bit. As you see, many of these are related to a communication area of growth for us to address. And just wanting to have the right level of approval for staff. Our staff are really diligent and want to follow protocol. We need to clarify it for them. But also parents wanted to know, what is that protocol, and is there an appeal process, or what does that look like? And then additionally, gaps in practice. So again, communication is a big theme, but also notifying parents of reading selection. So if my student is reading in class, what are they reading? How do I know in advance? What is the process? If I would like to challenge or get an alternate assignment, just have that openness, transparency throughout the process, and notice in making decisions too. So again, with the timeline and communication, we'll talk about how are we attempting to provide ample notice for those who would like to review the materials before it gets all the way to the board meeting for a potential decision. Involvement. As we've been engaging with folks around this, we certainly want to promote parent involvement, and of course we exist for students, and so the recommendation has come forward, let's involve our students in the process as well to get their voice. We love them at the board meetings, let's have them engaged in this as well. So we have an invitation for that. We heard loud and clear what is appropriate, what is not, and so that's part of our process, is to start clarifying that, provide training, have that be more clear and transparent, and ultimately come up with that work plan of how do we get 600 plus courses plus any new courses through, what is that going to look like, and what can you expect as board members from staff as we go forward in this process. So that's what we're hoping to address tonight. It is ambitious, and I'm happy to answer questions as we go or at the end. Our recommended improvements include an adjustment to the process. You'll recall at the January 12th, we had those big poster boards. I didn't bring them here tonight. We asked you to put them in order, and the order you put them in is actually what we want to have. And then we showed you at the time we didn't have it in that order, but that is what we think is a more thoughtful and thorough order, is starting with our curriculum lead teams. So if a change is proposed, if a new course, if a new material is proposed, let's have the teachers from across the district who are the leads in that subject area get together to review it. Review it means read it if it's written material, right? Let's all read it. Let's discuss it. Let's check the standards. Let's check the rationale. Is this appropriate in our classrooms and such? And if we start there, rather than the way we had it kind of flipped, we believe we can have more thorough vetting and rationale in coming through the process. And that may take a while. It may take a few months. It may take longer. So we have estimates in there. But after they meet monthly, typically, as teacher leaders. And so having them be the first point of design and recommending materials or curriculum, then it would go to an admin review process where we'd say, okay, what is it? Do we have enough information? What is the rationale? Has it gone through a thorough vetting? Now, we have administrators in the curriculum lead team, so it's not that we're not involved, but it comes to an administrative panel for review to check for our readiness. And at that point, we think it will take about 1 to 2 months typically. Okay, again, we can always slow it down. It would then go to the site review. So we see this all as part of the development process of the materials or the course. But the site review is an important piece to have department coordinators at the sites be aware of, hey, this is coming through, have school site councils involved, and we'll talk about the role. We have some recommended role changes in those groups, but have it for review and input. And then ultimately going to the curriculum instruction leadership team, that SILT group that is representative of really just diving deep in the curriculum instruction proposals. We think that between site review and SILT review, just getting on the different agendas and making sure we have proper notice, that usually takes about 1.5 months to 2 months. So that's our estimate there. So altogether, we're looking at 2 to 4 months, I'd say typically 3 to 4 months to go through that process before it would be ready to be added to a board agenda. So that is the order that we're suggesting.
So before you move on, I think it would be helpful if you can explicitly point out the parental involvement portions of this, especially since that's the area where we're making the change. So if you can just make it clear where that is and how that involvement occurs.
So thank you. At the site review process would be the first opportunity for our school site council to see the proposed change. Again, it's new, it's revised, whatever that change would be, would go there for the school site council. And what's nice about the school site councils, they have regular agendized meetings, they're open to the public, and they have those elected representatives representing the community of that school. And so that would happen district-wide, typically, because of the courses, the materials that we're approving are available for use district-wide. So that would happen across the district, and that's why it usually takes 1.5 months for it to get through the cycle of all the meetings. And then the SILT review would happen after that. What we've been doing as far as the timeline is we're building those agendas, trying to be strategic and get them to all the sites at the beginning of the month. So we have a timeline for that, and so they would be able to put it out there. But at the same time, we're building the SILT agenda and putting out a draft agenda. So our goal is to have it out about 3 weeks in advance for people to look at before it ever gets to SILT. They can provide comment in a public forum that's available for comment and have that interaction with plenty of notice.
Comment. You all started, I mentioned, the ability for the public to make comments on the SILT agenda.
Yes.
Is there a way to move forward the school site council comments that are made by parents, students, maybe other teachers? We don't get those comments in the SILT, if that makes sense.
You're saying move them forward. So when a public comment is made,
right, because there are public comments made, or there's parent representatives and school site council making comments on the curriculum books comments. We don't get those comments in the SILT, if that makes sense. I don't think.
So it'd be like in minutes. Minutes don't always reference all the comments. Usually it's action. So when we look at school site council, it's a federal and state required piece, and they do minutes. It's typically more of a formal, like when you see board minutes, is the action pieces than the comments.
Well, I'm just thinking. I know that's that.
You got to come up to the mic,
Jennifer Layton.
Well, that's just one area where the public has a chance to engage,
so
and they make comments.
Yeah.
And then they're stopped in a way, right? So.
So there is a public comment form on every one of the sites, school site council agendas, and those the sites usually look at, but those, I can get a hold of those and I can add those to the SILT public.
I'm just thinking if there's something that's applicable to a new class or anything that discuss it. So
that's something I could do. I just don't know how I would do it for since no one's doing it. I'm just thinking, yeah, that's easy.
Right, so we'll take that under advisement and look at how do we keep moving that forward. One of the things we are also mindful of is because we have a thoughtful process that's engaged and designed to engage our strategic stakeholders, our community representatives, including parents, students, and staff. We don't want a form to override that meaningful discussion that we're having in the meeting. And so that's something that we're just mindful of. There's a lot of discussion that happens, whereas we have people just putting comments in that may or may not add to the discussion. We do require it to be a vetted email address, so we're not accepting anonymous comments there either. So, there are comments on this? So one of the other additions, again with clarity of what are the levels and how do we get this approved, our former model had 3 tiers, you may recall, and that middle tier was very confusing for staff. Does it go? Is it the middle tier? Is it tier 1, tier 2, tier 3? And we believe that streamlining to just have 2 tiers would be more appropriate and provide more clarity. So tier 1 is our core texts and major works of literature like novels, full videos, like full-length videos, things like that would need to go to the board for approval for class-wide read, assignments, those sorts of things. So that's the standard pieces. And it would go through the full process that we just talked about. Tier 2 is how we're calling those other pieces that may include just-in-time texts, articles, video clips, whatever, and the shorter work. So poems, like articles, clips could go here. And if those become standard to the course as a whole, and that those conversations take place regularly in the curriculum lead meetings that are happening usually monthly. When the course is up for review, and we're building that review cycle, you'll remember we talked about. So every 3 to 5 years, each course is being reviewed. If we find, oh wow, this resource, this article, this excerpt is becoming standard for the course, we would build it in at that time. So rather than bringing long lists of supplemental resources outside of context, outside of the standards and all the rationale that we would need to make an even more informed and thoughtful decision, the idea is they would come through with the course outline and revision process and be updated every 3 to 5 years. In the process of the curriculum leads meeting and doing these types of material selection, this is where we would provide an extra layer of training for staff as far as what those appropriate materials are. What is it that we're selecting? What is it that we're not selecting? That training will include California Education Code about obscene materials and non-discrimination and all the things that we have to include and shouldn't include. And we're building that process as well. We're looking at some national models. The Miller test is one that's frequently used across the nation. It's based on a Supreme Court case, and it has a 3-part test of what's inappropriate for minors, what's completely inappropriate, and is it, get to the actual language, is it appealing to the prurient interests and really designed for obscenity, and that's the purpose of it. Is it offensive to the community as a whole? It's just not appropriate in a classroom. And does it have any literary value at all? I mean, I'm paraphrasing, but those, it's like a 3-part test that we'll be talking with our staff about. Say, does this even belong in the classroom? If not, if it doesn't pass the 3-part test, it wouldn't be one of those materials. And then we're also looking at, well, what if there are segments that are questionable? We talked last time about alternative assignments, how parents can ask for alternative assignments. And we're looking at how do we identify that? How do we give folks a heads up that there may be controversial topics or passages in what we're doing? And I'll get to that presently because that goes to part of our communication piece. Any questions on the tiers at the moment?
So, I don't know if you want to talk about it here. So we've talked personally about the Miller test.
Let's stick to questions right now without discussion.
Okay.
We just want to keep this for clarification.
Okay. So communication. So we talked about having the agendas posted, the draft agendas posted several weeks in advance. Now, it may not be the exact same agenda. That happens because things sometimes take longer or they don't go through all the process. So it may not be the final one, but at least it gives a heads up. These are the things that might come to SILT. It gives us 3 weeks to review it. The agenda notifications, part of our promoting parent involvement, we've already started by sending out those notifications district-wide. We used to send them to staff. Now they go district-wide. Students get the notification, the agenda's out there. Parents get it, as well as our staff, in case they're interested. We're starting to get more comments on those as well, so people are checking it out. But that third rose bullet you have there is notifying parents about the reading selections. Now, what we're saying is this is what we want to do. It will take working alongside staff and with our labor partners exactly what that looks like. But we're wanting to identify these are the major works of literature that a student is reading in the English class, for example. And give that in a syllabus perhaps, or in advance at the very beginning for the parent to be aware. And then they can look at, are these ones that fit my family values? Do I have a fence in any of these? And do I need an alternative assignment? We're looking at an extra layer of that as well. When we're doing the vetting, when we're looking through the 3-part test and such, is it controversial in nature? And we may have an asterisk or some sort of a flag with that. So the exact details of what that's going to look like, again, with tonight's direction going forward, we plan to sit alongside staff to outline exactly what that looks like. But that intent is to have some clarity and awareness so that we don't have those surprises. We also plan to use the New Horizon report that in the reorganization of our board agendas to say, hey, these courses are coming, or here's when we anticipate certain things coming forward at the next board agenda. So again, just trying to have that transparency and clarity of what we can anticipate coming forward. And the process, so whether it's on the SILT page and through different ways of communication, we'd like to clarify what the existing process is for parents to challenge assignments, to ask for those alternative assignments. We already have board policy and administrative regulations that guide it on controversial issues, on challenging instructional materials. But we need to just make that clear so that our parents know how to go about engaging in the process. So with that, with the communication, it's the clarification, and there are 4 different roles in particular that we're planning to clarify. School site council, we had asked them to vote, and that provided confusion. So they've been voting on materials, and we realized the board is the one that approves materials. You're the ones that have that role as we looked at Ed Code. And so what we're looking at is school site council, curriculum instruction leadership team. Those are input gathering as part of the development process to refine, have we answered all the questions? Do we have enough information? Are there any red flags or concerns as we're bringing these forward? We gather that input and maybe make adjustments as we go based on that information. And so that is one of the things we want to clarify and change, is that it's not a vote, yes or no, I like it, I don't. It's just an information item. What questions might we have? What information would you like to have as we go forward? And a chance for gathering that input. And when you look at the SILT items, we have a few items there. We've reframed the question that we ask the committee to have we asked the questions and gathered all the information necessary for the board to make an informed decision. And so we're making sure, is the packet complete? Are there things missing? Are there edits? And we do. We make edits live in there. We have the discussion and try to make that packet representative of the best product possible. We have already had our guest presenters invited to stay. We're not kicking them out. You're welcome to stay and see the process through. And our recommendation is at this point is where we can formally add student involvement. So of course everyone gets the blast out, they have the agenda, they have the form available to add comments. But we would like to invite our student board representatives formally to be a part of SILT, to add their voices into, well, we already have 2 parents per school, we have staff members, administrators representing each of the schools. We'd like to invite those student board members as well. And then we know, and just to clarify, the Board of Trustees sets policy, the Board of Trustees, and you mentioned that earlier, and then our job as staff is to implement policy that you're setting and take that direction. So then the process that we anticipate going forward, and you'll see already starting on tonight's agenda, is that we would identify items that are new, or if they're updated with very limited changes or significant changes, we would just make that clear on the agenda. And if it's brand new, it would go on action. If it's a revision to an existing, it could go on consent. And that's kind of what we're looking at. And if we anticipate it being controversial in nature, we would also put it on action, just as a matter of course, to provide for that public comment. We may not anticipate all of them, but that would be our due diligence to anticipate what seems to be worthy of that discussion and that we can anticipate would be desired by the community. And so with that, we've updated our timeline. We have already, our curricular teams have been working through a lot of courses. We have a lot of advanced placement courses in the pipeline ready to come. We've approved some international baccalaureate courses in groups. And so we're moving forward on those. We'll start getting longer lists going through the process at SILT. We just had one of our most ambitious agendas at the recent SILT because they're starting to get through to that level of the process. And so our goal is to start bringing those forward even this month at the next board meeting. In the beginning of the next school year, we're anticipating having a large push, a scalable push with all teachers in our professional development days to help update those course outlines, the ones that we don't really have on the books, and to work in that collaboratively. We've been talking with our union leadership as well and building those plans. And hopefully by this time next year, we think it's possible to get through the large amount of backlog. It may not be all, but we think we can get through many by having that collaborative approach. And then the goal after that is once we've gotten through the predominant number, we'll be able to start putting them on the website, making those course outlines transparent. Here's what the courses are, and having those available to the public. And then worthy of its own timeline, because it has been a topic of considerable discussion, is English language arts. And so the question of, is this book appropriate? And where do these novels fit? And how do we do all of that clarity? And we really looked at this carefully because there's a lot of work to be done. We have, as we know, a very long list of materials that we have been using for years in the curriculum, and then we have some newer ones that have been added. We have a process, so the new ones don't get added in a vacuum. They go through the process. But we're also in the middle of an English language arts adoption process that is a fairly lengthy process where we're piloting new textbooks, and we can't do it all at once. We have limited staff and time. And so what we're proposing here is that we really focus on the English language arts adoption that is already underway. We have extended and expanded the timeline through June so that our staff had additional time to be flexible in building those in. And the goal is by June, in fact, a number of our English teachers are already opting in to come to an additional week in the summer, to a summit, to come together and decide which adoption are we going with. Once we have that recommendation, we'll be able to move forward with redesigning those course outlines based on the new textbook that we'll be adopting. And with that would be a natural place to look at the supplemental materials, look at the novels. Perhaps we can pare down those lists and say, okay, these are the 9th grade novels. These are the 10th grade novels. Maybe it's 10 to 12 per, and it's not just this enormous list of, okay, who and what. But we need time to have those conversations. And so our recommendation is to work through the current pilot, then once we have that decided, work on those outlines and go through the materials simultaneously for the supplemental materials. That's where we can get that clarity of what is course-wide, what are literature circles or choice books, where do these fit, which ones are controversial and need that extra asterisk. Right? Like that needs to happen, and we think that would be the best place to do it. And so that, again, by this time next year, we would have the whole package, those course outlines with the materials, with the novels, and all of that plan ready to present to you.
Thank you. So, as a reminder to the board, our process is we're going to ask questions first for clarification, then we're going to hear from the public, and then we'll have our discussion, we'll share our opinions, and try and hopefully get to a resolution. So, I'm going to kick off with a couple of quick questions. We'll have time for everyone to have questions. I know you've touched on this, but I know it's also a big controversial touch point. I've heard a lot of input and concern regarding selection, appropriateness of books, passages, readings. You mentioned sort of the asterisk if we're gonna, as we're going through this process. Who and how are we gonna identify which of those may be controversial?
So the recommendation is that we start in the curriculum teams. So those grade level teams, well, in English is a grade level team, but others are course specific. So English 9 curriculum lead team comes together and reviews those books. And we say, okay, these are the 10 or 12 that we think are the class-wide reads for 9th grade. And we look at them and we do that Miller test that we talked about. Again, they've been through the training, they're aware of the protocol, they look at the test, say, is it appropriate for minors? Point 1. And if it is, then there's some other tests and other protocols that we're looking at that maybe it's not just the passage as a whole. So maybe as a whole, the book is appropriate, but there may be some passages or some language or some scenes that are controversial in nature. And so it's because they've read it and they're discussing it together and we're providing that time to do so as that team, that they would help identify, yes, we think that our community, based on the knowledge that we have from these meetings and other ways we get that input, we think this one needs to have that flag. I will say this, that as it goes through the process, if we've missed it, we'll have opportunities for input. So if the school site council is saying, I really think we missed it, this one needs that flag. Or if it's silts, we have those conversations. Those would be other ways to have that checkpoint before it comes here. But the idea would be to start with our teachers who teach the book and know the content the best.
If I'm hearing you right, we'll have a process to determine appropriateness. We'll also have a process for controversial, because they may not be synonymous.
Right.
If it is controversial, then it'll be flagged so that the proper notification, opt-out, assignments. I understand that, correct?
Correct.
Okay. I think that's my first question. I have a couple other. There's some time.
Along that same line, are we thinking about controversial books? Maybe those aren't core, or if anything is for the consumption of the whole class versus a choice book. Are we talking about distinguishing between those two at all with these asterisk books?
Right. It's a little hard to get to too much. Like, I don't want to say how many.
I don't have an example.
It's a little hypothetical at this point, right?
Yes.
So we want to go through the process, identify. But my goal would be is that like less than half of the books of a grade level would have that asterisk, right? Like that would be a goal. It's not like we're trying to be overwhelmingly controversial. That's one of the concerns that we have. It's not focused on education. There are a lot of ways to teach the standards. So we want to engage students. There are ways to do that in choice books and in smaller groups or other options. So I don't have a ratio in mind yet. I kind of want to see where we're landing with which books are the teachers recommending. Because it might be a non-issue if we say, okay, these are the 9th grade texts, and maybe out of 12, there's 2 that are controversial. But if the ratio comes in maybe unbalanced, that would be worth a conversation at a different level. And again, remember that the process where it starts in the curriculum teams and then goes to the administrative review. So it doesn't go straight to school site council. We'll have that chance for back and forth. If we're finding something that doesn't seem quite right, we can have that conversation with our staff. I don't have a number.
But not a number. I guess I'm looking for maybe this is a discussion. There's a difference between core and choice, right? And that's what I'm wondering. Do we need to provide a guideline of, or we're just trying to avoid whatever the controversial is in being core versus allowing some, as long as it's not just too much, right?
Let's take the questions.
Okay. All right. So that's a question.
Oh,
Is that,
I didn't really.
so is that a discussion point, or is that a direction?
Let's get all the questions and then we'll get
Okay, so we're not at the point where we don't know. We just
Right.
clarify that. Yeah.
So I think we'll have to navigate a little bit of it together. Our first stage is to build the training and implement that, and then engage in these conversations with the professionals that teach our students every day and say, okay, what does this look like, and how do we navigate this together? So yes.
Other questions?
I think I speak for the board when I say that the process is very important. I appreciate all the work that you've put in to streamline it. I would like to know what measure of success we will have in terms of, is it working and what's not working when we implement it. We have any kind of measurement that we're going to use to say it's working, it's successful, or no, it's not working. Maybe a future question.
That's a great question. Yeah, it's a very broad. So I guess I'm wondering, what's the it, right? Is the process working? I would say one evidence of the process working is that I could come up and say the bulk or all of our courses are board approved. We are now teaching curriculum and outlines that you have approved and hopefully are on the website publicly, right? Like that would be evidence of success that I'm seeing at the end of this road. And then it'll be continuous and we'll keep it updated, but we should be able to point to that and say, okay, the process is working because we're transparent, it's going through the whole thing, and the things are approved. The process is working if we're getting input and having these final products reference that and they're thoughtful and ultimately the process is working if our students are learning at high levels, because that's why we exist, right? So there's a lot to it, but that would be an interesting conversation.
If I could just add, ultimately, I mentioned earlier, the last step of the process is the board accountability. So we'll, at some point, take a look at this and say, did the direction that we give and our policies that we approve, did it get to the results that we as a board were looking for on behalf of our community? And that's the accountability part where we can say, John, why didn't it? Or John, great job you did. So, we ultimately hold that accountability as part of our responsibility.
Okay, yes, I think it's a question. It's partly discussion, so I'm trying to separate the question out.
You can always hold it till the discussion period. I just want to make sure we save our discussion for after we've heard everybody. So
Right. No, I think it's a question. And I'm wondering, in the process, I guess what I would want to know as a board member and a parent, if we are coming up or if we're flagging or anticipating subject matter that is controversial in nature, it would be helpful for us, and I think for parents, to know why are we choosing that text, something that we already anticipate that it's being red flagged. We already anticipate, gosh, we're going to need a certain amount of students who we already know they're going to want to choose something different. So we're setting up almost where we begin. for us, I think, and parents, we just want to know, why are we choosing that text over a different text? What's the literary value? What's the educational value of choosing something that's one versus the other? Does that make sense?
It does.
Okay.
And in this whole process, we didn't even talk about it January 12th, but John and I have reviewed board policies, and we found we actually have a board policy specific to controversial issues, which talks about if a teacher is choosing to teach a controversial issue, where's the balance, where's the appropriateness. There needs to be a lot of rationale and forethought into it, and the appeal process, which we're wanting to make transparent, includes up to a review committee where the teacher comes and presents, here's the why, right? So that all needs to be done in advance so that it's not random. It's very thoughtful. We believe our teachers are plan ahead and are very thoughtful, but to make that transparent if there is a question. So that's going to be also part of the enhanced training, because we've had these policies on the books. They're not new. We haven't talked about them for a while. So it would be worth sharing with everyone, making sure that we're aware. It needs to be very thoughtful. It's not just because this sounds fun and it's new, but where's the thoughtful educational value behind it? And so that's part of what we're planning to do.
I have a question that maybe will be helpful for the audience. We're talking about the controversial, and I don't think we can define that right now, because the Miller test is all about highly sexualized content. It's not just being, I don't like your opinion, right? And that's not what we're talking about here, correct?
There's
right.
two separate but related issues.
Right. I mean, I realize there's the controversial issue of board policy, but I think you're talking about the Miller test, trying to get it to minors. That's more sexual. That's sexually correct.
Right. That's obscene.
Obscene.
Yes.
So when we're talking about the asterisk books, I'm leading here that I'm assuming we're talking about just the books that might have passages that some people might find inappropriate, right? And not in a sexual kind of way.
It could be both.
Right,
I mean, we've heard comment on both the topic is controversial or the scene in the passage, right? So I think it could potentially be both.
I'm gonna bounce all the way over to our good friends way over there. Do our student board members have any questions at this point? Okay. Any more burning questions before we invite patient members of the public? Okay, we're going to jump into public comment. I have a bunch, so we're going to go with 90 seconds again. Call them out just like before, 3 at a time, so you can queue up. Remember, we're all going to listen even when we don't agree with the message, and be respectful of each other. First speaker is going to be Karen Combest, followed by Melissa Getzow, followed by Christina Munoz, I assume says M. All right, Karen.
Good evening. My name's Karen Combest, and what I heard, and thank you for the details. What I heard was the what's appropriate is super key for the tier 1. And then the Miller test, which by the way is just for obscenity. And in the Miller test, pornography is still allowed per the Miller test. So just keep that in mind. That doesn't necessarily cover controversial issues, which I think you all know the board policy on that, which does say suitable to age and maturity. It does say can't be anything prohibited by laws. It says it should be balanced, as we already discussed, and it should say the instruction shall not reflect adversely upon persons because of their race, ethnicity, etc., including gender identity and sexual identity or orientation. Basically, what you're saying, if you're going to use the Miller test, is that if it's not illegal, then it's okay, which contradicts your controversial issues policy. So the Miller test is like one maybe component of it, but it doesn't capture everything. And then, quite frankly, that doesn't even capture the tier 2 process if you're using the Miller test. And I asked a question yesterday of the board and some other members of the administration. how would this curriculum cover the fact that a video was shown in a classroom that had a sex scene in it? So that was just in time or teacher perspective or discretion, and that to me is a failure. And so in this process, I didn't hear how that would be solved, how that would be avoided. So if you think a
Karen,
sex
your
scene in
time's
class is okay, then you all are.
Melissa, followed by Christina, followed by Michelle Tom.
Good evening, thank you. Before the board makes a decision on the supplemental curriculum, I think it's critical that they ask themselves these questions. Do you trust our teachers to do the job they are being paid to do? Do you believe that our teachers are groomers and indoctrinators, as some parents have indicated in prior board meetings? We've been hearing from those that want to eliminate certain curricula that we should have balance. What does that mean in the context of approving supplementary curricula? The idea that one like-minded board is responsible for approving supplemental curriculum is a little unnerving. From what I understand, our school libraries already are being affected and have been limited in what is available to our students. What is next? I think I know. The teachers in the RJUHSD will no longer be able to tolerate the extreme oversight and lack of trust by the board and by some parents, and we will lose these teachers. There already are protocols in place if a parent or student objects to particular materials or assignments. Why should one group of parents and the board dictate how the public high schools in our district determine curricula for all teachers and their students? I respectfully ask the board members to please listen to all of the parents, continue to ask questions of our teachers, and let them do their jobs. And
Thank you. Christina, followed by Michelle, followed by Melissa McDonald.
Okay. The slide stating promoting parent involvement. How are you improving this? What's existing? And how quickly should we see this implemented? Who are leading these efforts, and will there be parental involvement in creating an advisory group for this? That hasn't been decided, then I'm recommending for the board to include that in this process. Now onto the curriculum framework. What are the ELOs established when identifying core and supplemental materials for curriculum and instruction? This information should already be prepared by teachers when creating curriculum in a syllabus. Why aren't ELOs, book titles, Lexile levels, book summaries, and book genres listed on a syllabus? This way, parents are given all the information to have a discussion with their kids on what books provide academic rigor and are appropriate to read. So many other topics are being encouraged in the classroom, and the foundation of academics has been lost. This is disruptive and having a negative impact on education and creating further division amongst our kids. Remember, these are kids whose brains are still developing. What they see and hear have lasting impacts beyond an adolescent's maturity. Having teachers constantly introduce hypersexualization materials to our kids is not your job. Set up guardrails that prepare our kids to be career and college ready. Bottom line, let's get back to the basics of academics. Thank you.
Okay, we have Michelle, followed by Melissa, followed by Tamara Mahmood.
Hi, good evening. I'm a little concerned about some of the words that are flying around. Appropriate, something is controversial. We're already assuming that there are works out there that are controversial. We have books that are on the College Board list that I think some people would consider controversial and maybe not appropriate, but they're on the College Board list. They're for our students to read and to learn and to be ready for college. I asked Dr. Moore about what would be used because I was concerned about what's not appropriate. And she did say the Miller test, and the Miller test does speak to obscenity. And that is the Supreme Court test for these types of, I guess, controversial things that we're talking about. But the First Amendment of the United States is not only the right to free speech, it also encompasses the right to receive information. The First Amendment does not permit suppression of ideas. The Supreme Court has ruled that in the school setting, the student's right to receive available viewpoints cannot be suppressed by school officials merely because they religiously or politically disagree with the information. And nothing gives another parent the right to decide what my child can read or learn.
I trust our teachers to choose the correct curriculum for our children, and you should too. Please do not take this away from our teachers.
Thank you. We have Melissa, followed by Tamara, followed by Rachel Hudson. Melissa.
Hi again. So I have a lot of the same thoughts as Michelle, just about the words that are flying around. As a researcher, I get nervous about what we call operational definitions in my field, right? So I agree with you, Marla. We need to define what we're talking about when we're talking about controversial. And the point is, who is doing that defining, right? And I think we're trying to get to the bottom of that. My concern is that you have teachers who have degrees and credentials to do their job. I was really happy, Dr. Moore, to see the way you answered the question that it'll start with the teachers. But I honestly think that if my kids, either one of them goes through one of our high schools without reading anything that's controversial or a different viewpoint that they hear at home or that makes them think, that we failed. I want my kids to be presented with different perspectives and things that maybe me and their dad don't agree with, but they're learning about. Maybe they'll change their mind. That's called critical thinking and perspective taking, and that's a good thing. It's not dangerous. It's not indoctrination. And so I also want to say, having sat where you sat, I will say this: regardless of what policy you put in place, you're going to have teachers who break it, and there are going to be situations that you can't control, and you need to have good site level policies to deal with it when it happens, because it will happen. Thank you.
Tamara, followed by Rochelle, followed by Meg Weiss.
Again, so much to echo what's already been said. I'm very concerned with these definitions of controversial, what's appropriate, and who's doing the defining of those terms. And I think given particularly what we've heard at the last several meetings, given the take on, hosting an event that would have supported our LGBTQIA students, I'm not sure that you're the best representatives of what's appropriate or what's controversial for our kids, and we want to maintain their academic rigor. One of the books that we repeatedly heard excerpts taken out of context and presented was written by Nobel-winning Toni Morrison, so if that's not an indication of literary value, I'm not sure what is. So I just really want to say that we deserve a balanced approach to this and not just the viewpoint of a certain subset of parents that is taken into account. Thank you.
We have Rochelle, followed by Meg, followed by Shemaine.
I appreciate the clarity that Dr. Moore provided, so thank you for that. And I appreciate just the discussion we're having. I don't know if we can define what's controversial tonight, or if ever. It's what I find controversial might not be controversial for another parent. And having taught English for over 20 years, what's been controversial in the literature I teach, for instance, might be something with violence in important lives. And parents might not understand what that book is about. And so I've had discussions with parents about that, and have never once ever had to provide another unit because we can understand the conversation with each other. So I appreciate the process that's been proposed. I think that will allow and invite parents and educators to have that discussion. It's been mentioned here, College Board reading lists, and so that one thing I just want to ask you as you're looking into supplemental and instructional materials and improving later, that this, just keep in mind where these books are being taught. AP literature is where most of those supplemental works were listed, and it is a college level course that students take. They have the option to take. These books have been on this list since 20 more since the beloved Blue Sky that were addressed tonight, and on this since the mid-1980s. These are not new texts that are being taught in these courses, and they come up on the exam year after year, so students will see these texts. So just keep in mind the level at which these books are being taught. So freshmen are not reading.
Oops, your time is up. I wasn't watching. You got a couple extra seconds.
Right.
Meg, followed by Maine, followed by Aaron Grover.
I just want to draw your attention to a troubling trend in our district and our community. The drag
show cancellation is a perfect example of a situation where churches and local activists spread lies and assumptions about something that they knew about. It was called inappropriate and perverse, and the drag performances were likened to provocative dancing and strip shows. The landing spot organizers received threats and were accused of grooming and indoctrinating kids.
This item is curriculum, so make sure you get to that.
I'm getting there. Does that sound exact approach they are taking to convince the board to censor inappropriate materials in our classrooms and making accusations that our teachers are grooming students? Legislating morality in our school district, we believe that every student has the right to a quality education that is free from discrimination and censorship, and that our schools should be inclusive and welcoming for all students, regardless of their background and beliefs. Education is about broadening horizons, expanding minds, and exploring diverse perspectives. It's not about promoting a narrow agenda or enforcement of a particular set of beliefs. And when you're deciding what's appropriate and what's not, or what's controversial and what's not, whose opinion are you taking?
We have Shemaine, followed by Aaron, followed by Brenda Howard.
Extremely graphic, sexually explicit books in the English departments and libraries. Videos inside classrooms of a hooker getting nailed from behind because the teacher is using quote-unquote just-in-time curricular materials. Where is the line? Where is the contribution to college and career readiness? Under Ed Code 60010, do these types of materials help students acquire facts and skills which will help them perform better in college and career? Are they directly laid out as required guidelines and state standards? The answer is there is no line. They don't contribute, and they aren't helping them perform better. Yet we are supposed to trust the teachers. A teacher in our district recently admitted in writing, "We won't remember the details of all the books we recommend to students." Another teacher admitted, "The selections in my library range from elementary to university level reading." I know I don't have to explain the sheer problem with these statements, but yes, you heard me right. Teachers are recommending inappropriate material without even knowing what they are recommending, as well as books that are not even close to a high school level. There are numerous board codes, ed codes, federal law, that there are several books currently in our curriculum that violate. So this isn't about banning books. You can still get these books. It's about doing the right thing and making sure that the curriculum review process is done well and done clearly, and that it has a clearly defined plan with clearly defined materials about what's appropriate and what's inappropriate. So I appreciate your consideration. Thank you.
Thank you. Aaron is next. Aaron, you filled out two, but you only get 90 seconds. Followed by Brenda Howard, followed by Strider.
Hello, my name's Erin. I have a daughter at Granite High School and 3 boys coming up hopefully to play. So first I want to thank the board. You guys have taken your time for multiple months. It's been stressful, I'm sure, a lot to take in. So thank you for all the due diligence you're doing to make this a proper right process. I do love seeing parents involved on your presentation there, and I really appreciate that. So as parents, I do think there should be standards for sexual content in the classroom. I also think that most parents do trust the teachers, but like most jobs, unless you're self-employed, there are checks and balances, reviews, committees, etc. In the future, my hope is that teachers welcome parents' input, value our opinions and our beliefs. My hope is for tonight that we continue to keep a well-balanced curriculum that we're known for and honor different perspectives while planning guidelines that keep extreme material out. This, to me, would result in a win-win, as parents would feel comfortable with lessons in the classroom and the teachers would still have the freedom to teach what they want. Thank you again for your time.
Thank you. Brenda, followed by Strider, followed by Elizabeth. Emma? All right. Brenda, are you here? Once or twice? Strider, are you here? Once or twice. Elizabeth, are you here? Outlasted a bunch of people here. Key Siadak? PI? You outlasted them. Reverend, you're still here. Followed by Wendy Beal, are you still here? Okay, followed by Sandy Marquez, you still here? Okay. All right, Reverend.
Well, good evening again. I'm afraid that what's being enthusiastically framed as parental input is actually misinformed and misguided religious overreach and intolerance. Educators are not the boogeyman. Teachers, librarians, and school administrators are academically formed, properly vetted professionals. They need and deserve our support, not subjugation to McCarthyist terror. The Miller test was created half a century ago, and it's now being dug out to advance false narratives that evil books and evil lessons are being taught in our schools. That's a lie. Everything is controversial if somebody decides to hate it. Education has to be all about truth, so let's be proper. Let's properly name what's happening. A few parents and so-called religious leaders are actually afraid not only that their children will learn that it's okay to be queer, actually more than okay, it's natural, it's good, and of divine worth. A few parents don't want true American history and real science taught at our schools. So I like to believe that you operate with the best of intentions and that you are probably trying to find a middle ground between false equivalencies. In closing, here are some important questions. What's the middle ground between teachers and school admin having the ability to do what they're trained, vetted, and fully capable of doing, and radicalized fanatics and neo-fascist groups that don't believe in free, holistic, and truthful education?
Your time is up.
Last question. What's the middle ground between radicalizing tolerance and loving?
You really need to follow our guidelines.
I am. Just
no, you didn't.
Let's not burn books.
So, Wendy, followed by Sandy Marquez.
I want to thank the board again for the great work they are doing. I want to thank you all for the workshop you had recently with parents, teachers, and community members. I believe it was valuable and hope other districts in Placer County take your lead. The one thing I believe was completely inappropriate was the way parents and teachers were asked to sit on separate sides of the aisle. A member of this administration that is here this evening did that, and I believe that is unacceptable. We need to come together, not be divided with the teachers, and this drew a clear line in the sand, not by the parents, but by one person in this administration. Educational Code Section 6002, which discusses the role of parents, guardians, and community members in the selection of instructional materials, states each district shall provide a substantial teacher involvement in the selection of instructional material and shall promote the involvement of parents and other members of the community in the selection of the instructional material. I want to thank President Constant specifically for addressing this and making sure our district is following education code. Let's talk about book banning. More buzzwords used by a minority of teachers and parents to shut down communication and parents being allowed to have a seat at the table. If parents want to buy sexually explicit materials for their children, that is their right. These materials have no business in classrooms or libraries. Thank you.
Sandy, this is the last card I have, so if you meant to put in a card and you didn't, this is your last chance. Raise your hand. Okay, this will be the last public speaker.
Good evening, I'm Sandy, and I'm from Placer County. I want to thank you for the opportunity to speak to you again, and to also say thank you for being so courageous and so hardworking and dedicated in trying to make the decisions that need to be made for the children in this community. I want to thank Dr. Moore. That was a great presentation, very clear, and I love that you have parent participation included in all of that. I think we need to remember that yes, we need to respect our teachers, and yes, they are trained and educated and love their job, but parents are the primary caregivers. They're the individuals that have been entrusted by God to care for the children. And Paul said in the Bible that everything is permissible, but not everything is beneficial. So we need to really think about those things. But I do want to thank the board again for taking this responsibility. And good night.
Thank you. All right, that is the end of our public comment. I had a couple questions that I forgot to come back to myself and answer, so I'm going to jump in and ask those. Nope, you can stay right there. I'm still a little uncomfortable with the fact that SILT meetings are proposed and designed to be closed to the public. I'm struggling trying to answer two questions. Why is it necessary? And could the SILT process still achieve its purpose with the public observing it? And if not, specifically, why not?
Yeah, those are valid questions, and frankly, we'll follow board direction, obviously, on where we want to go. What we've found is that SILT is an internal, normal operation of the district. It's a part of our process in developing curriculum, and there is a conversation. It's not a place for public comment because it's not a final product. We're having these rich discussions, and we have felt and heard from our staff of a serious anxiety and fear of even coming in that closed group. It takes a lot of courage and openness to have that dialogue and to invite that conversation. And when we add the public element, I don't know how honest and how real our conversations will be. We're having conversations. Are we going to use this in the schools? What does this look like? Is it ready? We're asking tough questions, and we want our staff to have, while we have the involvement of all the different groups and representation, we need it to be an emotionally safe space to have those tough conversations and to really dig into the issues. And that's one of the main reasons why we've recommended keeping it closed, and with a continuous group who understands the process, that we start the year training our new members, what is the process, here's what we do, we review that, and it's a very collegial group. Even if we don't always agree, we can have those dialogue, and there is concern about what that would look like if it was a bigger public forum.
And then we hear a lot about the college board. For that college board exam, about how many books are on that list?
And it changes every year, so it's a very long list. And what we have is a list of what was used in the past. So I don't know the numbers, but
It's big, right?
Yes.
So do we teach every one of those in our class?
Not usually. There's always some level of selection. You don't have to teach every single book for a student to score a 5.
That's helpful because we keep hearing over and over you have to have it because it's on the list. But I know having my own children go through the class, there's lots of things on the list. In fact, my daughter was complaining that several items that were on her AP exam weren't one of the things that they went over in class. So I just want to clarify that. Rest of mine are mostly comments. So do we have any other questions before we comments? Ladies at the end? Alright. I see you sometimes. Alright. Would anyone like to start with comments? I always have something to say. Okay. That's my nice way of asking for permission. So, a few editorial comments and then some comments on what we've seen here. I'm always surprised when we go through a discussion, we talk about what we're going to do, and then we have public comments that don't acknowledge what we just talked about. So, April, in your presentation, you talked about the determination of appropriate was going to be made by our professional staff in the process. Yet many people here spoke about how inappropriate it would be for this board to make the decision on what's appropriate or not. But what is being proposed, if I'm understanding it correctly, and I think I am, is that our professional staff will be making that determination. Is that correct?
That's correct.
I also heard at least a couple people say that they don't think parents should be involved. I think I heard some McCarthyism and other things, but it amazes me to hear that because state law says we must have parent involvement. Just like for the parents who have said that they don't think teachers should be doing it. It's clear in state law that teachers are the primary drivers of this. So I just ask that as we're going through these discussions, people listen and hear what we're saying and understand that sometimes what you walk in the door with in your mind is not what we're actually saying. Someone asked, why should the board be making these decisions? I just want to make a comment. Because the law says we're the ones who get to do it. The law is really clear. Curriculum, textbook adoptions, supplemental materials, it's right in the ed code, plain as day. This is a board function. Whether we want to do it or not, we don't really get a choice. That is our obligation. We're elected and put in this position. We also talked about our controversial topic policy. And I thought it was very clear when you made your presentation. You didn't say if something was controversial, it wouldn't be taught. I think what you said, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that we have a policy that says if something is controversial, we will teach it with balance by giving all sides of the issue. And I think our policy says that we'll be careful not to give personal perspectives. We'll provide all sides and let our students think critically to come up with their own learnings. Is that correct?
That's correct.
But somehow we heard from a number of people that this board was going to ban controversial materials. Never said that. So I just want to make sure we get all that out there so we understand what we really are talking about and what we really are doing or not doing. Those who are making comments in the back, if you want to make comments, go outside and do it. We've closed the public comment period. This is our time to talk. We are very respectful. Not one person on this board interrupted one of you speaking. So I'm just going to ask you to do the same. So I think it is important that we just acknowledge that we have all those processes. I think those are all my questions and comments at this point. I want to hear first from our student board members. Any comments based on what you've heard tonight? Anything you think it's important for us to think about before we make a decision? Because you guys are the ones who really affected this.
Yeah, so I was here at the January 12th meeting, so that was a lot, and to be here too is just a privilege. But I'll just reiterate a part of what I said if you weren't there at the January 12th meeting. I said that within my classes, I have been exposed to the realities that are human. The struggles and the triumphs that thicken within our education should not be censored. With Antelope being one of the most diverse schools in the district, I find it important for our curriculum to be diverse in order to cater to all students. Not only have I learned about race, gender, sexuality, and inequalities, I've learned about empathy, cultural awareness, acceptance, simply traits that all students should be equipped with when walking into the real world. Again, based on my experience at Antelope, I undoubtedly trust my teachers to select the proper materials for my education.
So, thank you. Put you on the spot a little bit. Based on what you've heard tonight, do you feel if we were to move forward with what is proposed, what you've experienced?
I do think we're moving the proper steps to where we want to be. Not exactly all the way there, but I think including the public and students also, like you saying that you wanted student board representatives to be part of SIL. I think that's an amazing idea because I don't get why students shouldn't be a part of this topic or this question.
Thank you. Autumn, do you have anything to add?
It's a tough act to follow, but I agree wholeheartedly with Glenna, and I just think that out of all the classes I've ever taken, just for me personally, the best for my character have definitely been my English language arts teachers, and I trust my two teachers, especially my AP Lang and Lit teachers, where these probably more controversial books are coming from. I feel that I have learned so much from other perspectives that I have not experienced, and that I am so glad that I have the privilege of never having to experience, yet I gain a lot of insight from other people's perspectives, and I think that's just such a value that should not be taken away. And I am glad that parents are having the choice to exempt their kids from this, and I think that's great, and I'm glad that you guys are taking steps to set that in stone, because I think that choice is really important. But just from my point of view, I think that it's very important that kids are taught things that they might not be taught at home.
Thank you. April, I have one follow-up for you. Assuming we were to follow the recommendations that we have here, would it fundamentally change the input and process that our teachers are taking and selecting how the curriculum, creating it and selecting the materials?
I don't think it would fundamentally change. I wouldn't characterize it that way. I think it's more about clarity and process. I do think the reorder of where it starts is a big change, and that we're making sure that we're not just doing it at school sites in isolation, but we're really coming together as a district. I would say that's the biggest change, is really how we're starting it and building that systemness together. But not, I wouldn't call it fundamental change.
Comments, questions, concerns from my colleagues?
If I understand correctly, to date there has not been a process like this.
Right, we've been following a process since October of 2021, but this is the update to it. And again, with more communication, more clarity. So we came up with lists, we have a list of 900 supplemental, and we had different tiers, and it was confusing. So we've had a process. Since that time is when we kind of implemented that more transparency and involvement. We're taking it to the next level, more clarity, more transparency, and more clear involvement levels.
Okay, so I'm thinking this through. I think in the end we need to make sure we're doing this. What's important here is this training aspect to make sure that we're clear if we're clear in the guidance we want to give you of what the vision around what's going to happen. Is that the most helpful thing I think at this point? Because personally, I think I agree with the process that you put down. Speaking with teachers, especially in the just-in-time material, I know that flexibility is very important to them. And I think we just need, as a board, given all of the comments, just some guardrails or guidance in that training to make sure that we're all comfortable, the community is comfortable with what those guardrails are, while they have the flexibility to bring in what they think is important in the classroom. Is that so? That part.
That fit with your understanding based on the process where's the gap?
Yeah, I mean, I feel comfortable working with staff to develop that. We did a lot of research on what are those best practices in training. If there was specific direction or guidance, we'd be happy to take it. But I think heading to that night's conversation, we're ready to get going and build it and start implementing the training. So I don't know how in the weeds you want to get, but we're happy to take that direction and make sure that it's a robust training that includes the elements.
So we were talking about boards, right? So we have board policy, controversial issues. I think that policy is complete. I know. So the idea that we're trying to manage ideas in the classroom is, I don't think that's what's happening here. Let's say that. So I think we have board policy 6164, and that would be based. You're going to base your training on that.
Yes, and the other ed codes related to
yes. Okay. So the only thing that was really brought up that's new is this idea of class, or how do you address obscene materials and that definition of it, and is that something that you're still going to work through, or do you need guidance from us?
Well,
we come back.
Yeah, so I guess I would like guidance if I'm not on the right track. But what we're looking at right now, and based on a lot of conversations that we've had and input we've gathered, is The Miller test is generally has in mind to does the book, let's say it's a book, belong in a school or not, right? And it's pretty strict, and it's that work as a whole is the purpose inappropriate, all of the elements of the Miller test. And so if we use that to say, okay, does this book even belong? Does it have literary value and all of that? We may still say, yeah, it actually passes the Miller test. It belongs as a whole. But maybe there's passages and there's smaller elements that are, these 5 pages go really into a graphic scene. If we're getting into that level, that's what we're saying. That might be part of the guidance we use to flag it, to have that layer of awareness for parents, because it's that transparency. It's not that we're saying no, it's not appropriate in the classroom. We'll make sure we have thoughtful rationale. Is this appropriate for the standards? All of the education piece that we're working on, and then if there's that obscene scene, say it's not obscene work, but there may be some graphic piece that we've talked about, examples that maybe have great literary value, maybe on a special list. Then under what cases? Oh, okay, it's for AP Lit because it's one of those on the test, and then how are we using it? That's where the conversation happens. So I don't know if this is a training element. It's that conversation of how are we using it? Is it a mandatory class read? Is it a selection that students choose one of these 10 books to read? That's where the conversation comes in, and ultimately it comes back to you as, is this appropriate? As we're revising our lists and coming up with these, it will still come back here for that review.
So I think, and we spoke about this yesterday, it all comes now. So the Miller test was a test of what's legally obscene, and now we're talking about minors in the classroom. So I think there's a slightly different standard that we should have. So my concern is the verbiage of the Miller test might be too broad for what's obscene, what's appropriate for a minor to read from again, this is sexual, descriptive. I'm not talking about innuendos, references. That's everywhere. So in the training you have, that's my only concern of just saying we're flat out, we're straight up using the Miller test. I think verbiage in that is too broad for minors, I think. So whether it's talking about right now or you run with it later.
So if I may ask, just for clarity, so I like that word explicit, right? So if there's an explicit passage, then what I'm thinking is we would, in our guidance, in our work with staff, families are facilitating conversations, we're in them with the teachers, that it could be found to still be appropriate in the classroom with an asterisk, or are you saying anything with an explicit shouldn't be? Because in the plan, it would be potentially included if there was all that extra value and rationale with that.
So I was going around the high schools talking to teachers. I think there was a teacher at every school that straight up, most of them all agreed we would never read some of the stuff in the classroom. And most of them spoke about excerpts from books. And so maybe this is where you said that we should start flagging books as excerpts versus whole books. And we might find that all of these books that are just getting thrown at us are truly books that our teachers have never read any of those excerpts in class. But again, we need to acknowledge for our parents and community that this is an excerpt book.
Of how it's being used will be helpful in making these determinations.
Yes. Now, if there are explicit, no, that's probably not appropriate as a core material. You should never make something like that a required reading for class. I think there's so many books out there that force parents to put their children in a position where they need to opt out, as sometimes there are weeks of discussion in the classroom. And I know it's so easy to say, oh, you just have to opt out, but for a child to sit out for a 2-week discussion, group projects in a classroom, that's a huge hindrance, isolates them. I don't think that's the best solution. Obviously.
I'll just sort of expound, but I think some of this is hard. We don't have the actual, because if we approve this, we will start to see the work product of this process. My understanding, based on what I've heard tonight, is we'll have more information, more stakeholder engagement, and more context. We will be more informed, more equipped to either approve or deny curriculum.
Yes.
In the right spot there.
That is our
Mike, this is probably my last question for you. We have a recommendation. Clear, this is our professional staff's recommendation. You, with all of our smart people here, what you're bringing us, your recommendation, what is best for guiding our teachers, our administration moving forward, curriculum, and textbook adoption, recognizing that we had a bunch of gaps, either making the gaps smaller or eliminating them.
That is correct.
So if the board takes this recommendation and approves it, we're not going against what we're teaching. Okay. Because I think a lot of the discussion we've heard tonight is, why are you doing this? Why aren't you valuing our professional staff? Just really trying to clarify, this is the work of our professional staff. Questions, concerns, comments? Last call, because
I just say, I really like to know it's a question of how we know that this is real. And I think that's just a really good point. It's something forward with it. Right now, what we had wasn't working. And to be able to tell that in the next years, if we see that we need to introduce more parent involvement, or change the order, or get parents involved sooner, or whatever that might be, like that needs to change, then as we go. And so I think the question is just how do we it's working? And what we've done is really good. It's a good first step. It's something we have right now. I just wish it was that parents send their kids to school and they didn't have to worry about it. I like to go to schools, but things have become very complicated. And so I just
have a check-in and see how things are working. I mean, so training, and so how, when is the first,
agenda. It's one of our new courses, but I think even at the next meeting, I believe we have a group some of the revision ones, or some of our existing courses. Like the next item is a new course, but we have revisions coming through. I think it's the next meeting, and so you'll start to see them trickling in. Our intent related to the training is to develop it this spring and maybe pilot it with some of our teacher curriculum teams that are meeting before we launch it system-wide at the beginning of next year. So we're going to develop it, check it out, make sure it's working, and then do that this spring. So you can check anytime you would like an update, we're happy to update.
Okay, so in that spring, that training, will those be English teachers or you focus on English? Or
Not necessarily.
Okay, well, I wonder if maybe some of that could be schools English departments. Just see, okay, let's go for English 9 and see what this looks like as they look at their current board curriculum. Like, are you asked how many books are being asked against? I believe, you know, whatever you decide, it's controversial.
I
Just
do.
to see how it works.
I'm only hesitant because we had a whole separate timeline for English because
Okay.
they're in a pilot. So I'm trying not to overload. It would derail or the pilot. So like I think in June it would be absolutely appropriate in that week that our teachers are spending after the school year. Yes, we'll be doing it with English then. I think we can do it with some other groups a little earlier to try it out and make sure we're getting it right and see what feedback they have as we're straight.
You know, one other thing we missed another key point for parent involvement. That's every time we
Absolutely.
Sort of skipped over that. Well, there is the staff recommendation. Changes the AR 6141 which needs to directing staff to move forward. It's that. Motion in a second. Any last discussion? All right, let's start. Well, I'm going to do it by voice. Do it all. By the way, after this, it's past your bedtime. Go. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Look at that. 4, 0, 1. Thank you all very much. But we do have a little bit more work to do. We're going to let our student board members go do the homework they've been putting off and then get some sleep at night. Those of you who are exiting, try and do it quietly so we can get into our last item here. Our last item is approval of a new course. April, is that you? All right.
I represent the team. It went through SILTS recently. It's Unified Sports PE and is a really neat testament to what Mr. Becker shared earlier. We have unified sports on our campuses throughout the year, and this will be an elective course where our general ed and students with IEPs can come together and practice for those unified sports and do some great team building and leadership building as well. And it's been a really great program, and we have students wanting to capitalize on that in an elective course during the school year. So we would recommend approval, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Can you discuss the 3 asterisks? Controversial. That's a joke. There aren't any others.
I didn't think it.
Any questions or comments from the board? Anyone here want to speak on this issue? All right, that means it's time to make a motion on this item. We have a motion to approve this new course. Do we have a second? A second? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Is approved. Look at that, our first one, 401. All right, our next item is the pending agenda items, which you may have noticed is the Horizon report that I mentioned. We'll continue building that out so everyone's aware of what we're doing. Our final item of the night is a motion to adjourn. We have a motion to adjourn. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
All in favor? Haven't heard anyone. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, we are adjourned. Thank you, everybody.